result in a fine of $1,000 and imprisonment for 6 months on conviction. If this applies to you, please stay in your home or your temporary residence. Again, all persons who have arrived on flight from outside of the Cayman Islands since Monday, 16th March 2020, you are required to isolate for 14 days following your arrival.
This is a public service announcement from your Radio Cayman, your community radio station. Here are some coronavirus prevention tips.
Home isolation means staying indoors and completely avoiding contact with other people. You need to do this if you have symptoms of COVID-19. If you are practicing home isolation, you should stay in a well-ventilated room with a window to outside that can be opened separate from other people in your home. Keep the door closed and use a separate bathroom from the rest of the household, if available. If you have to share these facilities, regular sterilization will be required. Consider drawing up a bathroom schedule for washing or bathing and have the isolated person using the facilities last.
For the latest updates and information, please visit hsa.ky/public-health/coronavirus or gov.ky/coronavirus.
Oh, I think they're doing a great job. A lot of them are.
Good afternoon, Dwayne. How are you?
Not too bad, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Radio Cayman's Talk Today with Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
But I do have some questions.
there are more questions than answers.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today.
If you're ready to talk, we're willing to listen.
Well, I really enjoy this program today.
Cayman Islands foremost listeners participation program.
May God bless every person.
Good afternoon and welcome to Talk Today. My name is Patrick Schmid and I'm standing in for Sterling Dwayne Ebanks today. Welcome to Monday, the 23rd day of March. It is a pleasure to be here with Dr. Smith, the Medical Officer of Health, and Dr. Williams, pardon me. I must have been substituting my own name. And Dr. Hazel Brown, the Chief Nursing Officer. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And we're going to be going directly to some discussion with them immediately after this commercial break.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands foremost listeners participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email talktoday@candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255.
Courtesy of Flow.
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Good afternoon, and thank you for staying tuned to Talk Today. My name is Patrick Schmid, and I'm here for Sterling Dwayne Ebanks today. So good afternoon, Grand Cayman, Little Cayman, and Cayman Brac, and to the greater Caymanian diaspora. As I mentioned earlier, we have Dr. Williams, the Medical Officer of Health, with us, as well as Dr. Hazel Brown, the Chief Nursing Officer, and we have welcomed them. It is certainly our pleasure and privilege to have them here with us to disseminate important information relating to the ongoing COVID-19 issue that we are all facing internationally. And so, without further ado, and reminding the callers that the lines are open and we only have our guests for a short period of time. Nevertheless, I would like to welcome the doctors to go ahead and tell us a little bit about what their presence in here today in particular is about.
Well, good afternoon, Caymankind. It's my pleasure to be here, even though it's under very trying circumstances for everybody right now. There are a couple of points that we want to establish before we get started in the conversations, and I encourage callers to call in. Firstly, we want to make sure that everybody understands that this is a very fluid situation. Things are changing even as we speak. We're getting new data in. We're getting new information on the virus, on how it's expressing itself in the human populations globally. We're getting some good data now starting to come out of those countries that have actually had large numbers of cases. And we need to understand that until we get good data, everything remains up in the air about this virus. The second point that we want to start out with is the need for Cayman to remain calm. The Premier is taking some very drastic steps, and we need to know that those things are necessary for the protection of our population. And we want to encourage Caymanians and those resident or guests among us to please comply with the instructions of the Premier and with the new regulations. They are not to inconvenience us, but to protect us. And we want to encourage everyone to comply with what is out there. We want you to comply with the isolation precautions. When you're given the instruction to self-isolate, we want you to do so. When you are quarantined, well, you have no option there. That's a legal requirement, and it will be enforced. When you're thinking about coming to the hospital or any healthcare provider, think twice. We are a population that have had tremendous access to healthcare, and right now we need to think about the whole concept of we to work for you, you stay home for us. And we really need to get that message out there. So one of the things we're going to talk about today is the flow of patients, what we're trying to establish within the Health Services Authority, and what the private people are also trying to establish.
Dr. Brown, would it be correct to say that the advice or the standard advice is that if you think you may be starting to experience symptoms that you're not sure about, that you call the hotline first?
Absolutely. Yes. Call the flu hotline first. If you are preferring to go with your private provider, call them first. Right. Because right now we're trying to protect the entire population from the spread. We must protect our healthcare providers. They are the ones who are going to be at the very forefront when we get the surge. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's a matter of if. I think it's a matter of when. We don't want a large surge, but there will be a surge. Right. And we need to protect those healthcare providers. So we say, call us first. Right. Call the flu hotline or call your private healthcare provider. The flu hotline will guide you to, first of all, they're going to do a quick triage. We want to know where you are, what's your name, what's your phone number, so that we can establish where people are coming from. And that over time, as the surge comes, that will help to guide us in how we move patients through the system.
Yes, ma'am.
And if you're having mild symptoms, we're going to instruct you to take your over-the-counter meds. Mm-hmm. Take whatever you would normally take if it was just common cold. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to try to keep in touch with you. We want you to call us back if things worsen. Right. If you're experiencing shortness of breath or any symptoms, any high fevers and that sort of thing, then we're going to direct you through the system, probably through the flu clinic first. Right. But we want to ensure that people know when to come. So don't just show up at the flu clinic either, because we may have masses of people there at this point in time and not be able to accommodate you very quickly. So we're going to try to control the flow of the patients through there so that we can minimize the number of people in there. If people are short of breath and really, really ill, we can send the ambulance. We can call, or you can call 911, and then 911 will offer another level of triage. Right. We want to know when you're coming so that we can protect you in case there are other things going on in the hospital, or we can protect our healthcare providers, because we need them to be standing as we move forward.
Absolutely. And just by way of reminder to the listening audience, the flu hotline, unless I'm corrected otherwise, is 1-800-534-8600 if you're calling toll free, or 947-3077.
Yes.
You can also access via www.hsa.ky, or even send an email at flu@hsa.ky.
Absolutely.
Dr. Williams, pardon me for mixing up your name a little while ago, but welcome once again. Would you like to say a little bit about your presence here today?
All right, thank you, and thank you for inviting us to be here, share with the public. Dr. Brown already explained quite a few things that we are actually doing that have been done from the HSA perspective, also a national perspective. And I just want to reiterate in that. Also, I just want to say that even though the government has taken a lot of proactive measures in order to prevent a big outbreak of the disease in the Cayman Island, all these mechanisms and process and policies and different directives will help us to flatten the curve, the epidemiological curve. However, communicable disease has no borders. So the public need to understand that the effort need to continue. Everything that we are learning, that we are telling everyone now to maintain social distance of 6 feet, cough and sneeze into your shoulder, into your elbow, frequent hand washing, and self-isolation for ill patients, persons, or those with a travel history or history contact with a suspect patient. Those things need to continue in order for us to maintain this disease. At some point, we're going to have to reopen our borders.
Right.
And some cases from overseas may come back into the island. So we need to maintain that same advice that we're doing now, not only to prevent coronavirus, but also to prevent a lot of these diseases like influenza or any of those diseases that is transmitted by droplets, like the coronavirus.
Yes, sir. Can I just ask, by way of additional information or clarification, rather, for the purposes of the practical application of these, not necessarily, in some cases rules, but in other cases certainly important guidelines that all of us should be following. For families, for example, you have, say, 5 persons in a household. I wouldn't imagine that the 6-foot rule necessarily applies. Is it the case or not inside the house in the evening, what have you?
Yes, in some places it may be difficult to apply that type of recommendation. But definitely, it's any of these people, the person at home, have flu-like symptoms.
Yes, sir.
We will advise the rest to stay as far as possible for this person. If they have face mask for this person who do have symptoms, to wear a face mask in order to prevent the other from getting sick.
Right.
But we understand that it's not practical all the time to maintain this distance. Yes. But definitely, if someone is having flu-like symptoms, we will try to advise them for this particular person to stay away from the rest.
Right.
And if they have a mask, to definitely put a mask on.
Right. And are masks readily available at the moment?
I think we need to speak very, very clearly to that. We have masks at the hospital. We have some personal protective equipment, but we need to ask the public to be aware of misuse and abuse of these PPE that people are going to need literally to save lives later on. We see persons in supermarkets with masks that really and truly they don't need. The truth is that often a mask can create a greater risk if you don't know how to use it properly.
Right.
And the same for gloves. You have to be alert when you're wearing this PPE, even more so probably than when you're not, because if you know where your fingers are touching, if your hands aren't covered with gloves, you may be more alert to where what you're touching. And if you don't have a mask on your face, you may be more alert to when you're touching your face.
Right.
But when you're wearing these things, you may not be that alert, and it can lower your guard.
Right.
So there's that. You need to know how to use PPE if you're going to use it.
Right.
And secondly, that same PPE that people are struggling out there to purchase and stock up on may be something that would save someone's life later down the road if it were used appropriately. So we have to be very, very careful with that, and we would ask that the public learn how to use this personal protective equipment. If you're going to use gloves, you still need to gel. You can't wash your hands as much with them, but you need to use your hand sanitizer with the gloves.
Absolutely.
And when you're using your mask, you need to know how to take them off. You don't just grab a mask by the face and take it off, because then you're spreading contagion in the same way as if you weren't using a mask. So we really need to be alert to that. And people, there's lots of good information. The other thing is that to know where your information is coming from.
Yeah.
Go to the CDC website, go to the WHO website, go to gov.ky coronavirus, go to hsa.ky coronavirus. There's clear instruction there that's all fact-based. Right. It's not coming from the multimedia.
Thank you so much. We're going to go to a short commercial break, but just before we do, I'd like to remind the listening audience that you can, of course, call in and ask our guests questions, should you so desire, on 949-8037 or toll free on 1-800-534-8255, or indeed you can send us a WhatsApp on 925-3261. So we'll be right back after this commercial break. Please stay tuned to Talk Today.
If your business is over here, but your customers are over here, adding more yellow to your business will bring you both right here. With everyone searching yellows, print, online, and mobile app, getting your business noticed is easier than ever. Book your consultation today at findyellow.com.
I've got some beautiful clothes. I know just where they go. Pure and cleaner. They're there for you and me. Best cleaners you will see. Pure and cleaner.
Due to the current situation, Puritan Cleaners will be changing hours of operation and would appreciate if their valued customers can collect their orders from all Puritan Cleaners locations. Savannah, Countryside, 946-1884. Elgin Avenue, Georgetown, 949-2452. Eastern Avenue, Georgetown, 949-7104. Hours of operations are currently 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. until further notice. Puritan Cleaners, you feel good when you look good.
A public service announcement from Radio Cayman.
Rumors and misinformation will not help us tackle the coronavirus. Remember, you can check on www.gov.ky/coronavirus to see trusted and up-to-date guidance from the experts. This page is being continually updated and should become your first port of call for the facts. Please do your part to avoid scare tactics and fake news. This government is not complacent. We will continue to prepare tirelessly, make the necessary decisions required in the best interests of the health and safety of our people. You may feel worried, scared, or stressed about the serious nature of COVID-19, but we can and will overcome this public threat. Again, remember to cover your cough and sneezes, wash your hands often, and avoid close contact with persons, especially if they're showing signs of respiratory illness. Please stay safe, and may God continue to bless the Cayman Islands.
For the latest updates and information, please visit hsa.ky/public-health/coronavirus or gov.ky/coronavirus.
To protect the health of staff and customers, Water Authority Cayman has ceased providing face-to-face service and closed its office to the public until further notice. Only essential services that ensure customers have water supply will be provided. Customers can still conduct business with the authority electronically. If you need to pay a bill, visit our website, waterauthority.ky, and click on the Pay My Bill button. Payments can also be made via the local banks. Customers can contact our customer service team by emailing info@waterauthority.ky or calling 949-2837. Customers in Cayman Brac who require truck water can continue to make requests by calling 948-1403. For updates and important messages from the Water Authority, visit our website, waterauthority.ky, and our social media pages.
Radio Cayman News.
Local grocery stores are forced to implement product limits after panic buying by
The
residents.
government is taking in all seriousness the magnitude and the severity of this matter.
A reminder from the Chief Medical Officer, all people who have arrived on flights are required to self-isolate.
I think the most likely decision 3 weeks from now is an extension of the current state.
Radio Cayman, your voice, your choice for today's biggest news.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Good afternoon and welcome back to Talk Today. Again, my name is Patrick Schmid and I'm sitting in for Sterling Dwayne Ebanks. We have the pleasure of the presence of the Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Williams, and the Chief Nursing Officer, Dr. Brown. And we have been discussing various bits of advice, some of which you may be privy to and some of which you may need reminding of, but it's certainly for all of our benefit. And without further delay, I would like to go directly to Dr. Williams.
All right, thanks. So basically, we want to discuss a couple of things as well. We want to talk about the symptoms of the disease with the incubation period, and we have mentioned before, incubation period is the time that goes from when the person is exposed or to the virus until they actually start developing symptoms. This usually is ranged for the COVID-19 between 2 to 14 days. There have been seen some other cases with a larger incubation period, but 2 to 14 days is normal, and the average actually is between 5 to 6 days. So we expect persons who have been exposed to the coronavirus to show some symptoms between 5 to 6 days. That takes into account that a percentage of these patients don't have any symptoms at all. We know that over 80% of the patients have no symptoms or mild symptoms of the disease. So that is something that we definitely need to take into consideration. The patients who do develop symptoms is a virus, so you expect the regular symptoms, flu-like symptoms like fever, cough, sore throat, shortness of breath for those who go run into a little more severe type of the disease or moderate cases, coryza as well. But the fever is important because over 70% of the patients have developed fever, a fever over 100.8 or 38 degrees Celsius. So that's something to look at. And the cough is a dry cough, usually a dry constant cough. The other symptom will come after, usually in this patient. I know a lot of patients believe, and there's a request from patients and others, physicians as well, healthcare provided, to test patients. We need to understand that right now our testing capacity is limited, our material, so even though we're testing here. So we definitely need to stick to the World Health Organization, the Caribbean Public Health Agency, and Public Health England recommendation for testing, and is to test patients who actually have symptoms. So there is a clear case definition for a suspected patient, and all suspected patients will be tested, but they need to meet this criteria. And this has been shared with all the physicians in the public and in the private sector. And the case definition, I don't have it in front of me, but mainly is saying that any patient with a travel history, now to any country right now, initially was to China, but now to any country with a travel history within the last 14 days, and the symptoms that I mentioned before, should definitely need to be tested. It's a suspected case. Also, if we have a patient with these symptoms, no travel history, but the patient has been in contact with a confirmed or a probable case of coronavirus, also meet the criteria to be tested. And we could have this patient with severe respiratory distress, and we have no other condition that will explain that this patient is what he's suffering from, then they also will meet the criteria to be tested. I think it's important for the public to know that. It's not that we don't want to test you because we don't think that it's important to test, but the limited resources that we have at time, we need to make sure that we use it wisely for those who meet the criteria established by international organizations.
Dr. Williams, can I just ask you as a sort of follow-on from that? When a patient is developing those types of symptoms, do they get priority if they are a high-risk patient, like an older person with particular complications and so on?
Yes, definitely. We know that the patient with a certain age, the elderly, and also patient with chronic condition comorbidity like heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, patients on treatment for certain conditions that have an immunosuppressed system, they will get priority definitely to be managed and to be tested. And we need to keep a closer eyes on those ones because we know that those are the ones that have a higher risk of developing complications.
Right, sir. And just also by way of putting it into context, if you will, as well, is it correct to say that the World Health Organization is saying that the mortality rate is around about 5%? Is that correct, sir?
That's all dependent on the countries. We know that when this started, when the whole outbreak started, the mortality rate was around 2-3%, and that's because in China was around 5%, but the rest of the world was a lot less. That can go up now because, as we know, countries like Italy are having a high mortality rate over around 8.5%. So when you look at the average, it averages that. But you go other countries, it all depends on your health system and how organized you are on all the measures that you take in place. You go to like Singapore, have very, very few mortality, I think 2 cases. Countries like, for example, Germany have a lot of positive cases, but still have a mortality rate, I think, of 0.02. So it's all depend on the country. So the 5% is average. And then we're going to have to look at that average, but they all depend on the country, how overwhelmed their health system get.
Right.
And
what
all
they
the
use as a
measure.
denominator.
Yeah.
Yes. And so can I just also ask, I presume that as of last night at 11:59, of course, our borders were closed effectively, and except I would imagine exceptional circumstances and not in relation to cargo and things like that, which is not relevant directly, but nevertheless, presumably we'll be able to contain a bit better. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, it is a fair assumption. And that's why the government has taken this proactive measure to not only close the border, but close schools, close bars, and all the regulations that come up. We need to avoid gathering.
Yes.
We need to respect social distance and continue with that.
Yes.
And like I said before, all these measures will help us to kind of flatten the curve. We have not got into any curve yet because we don't have any local transmission. But as we have said before, we expect to have some local transmission. We don't expect a very bad situation, but all the measures definitely gonna help us to flatten that curve. But we need to continue with those measures because at some point we have to open our borders.
Right.
And we need to continue to this measure to avoid any large outbreak of the disease here in the Cayman Islands.
Absolutely. And Dr. Brown, don't want to leave you out, of course. And again, thank you both for being here. I'm sure the listening audience is garnering a lot of important information from the information that you're providing. Can I just ask specifically, if you're comfortable with this, in relation to persons who need regular prescription medications and who would go to the HSA pharmacies for those purposes, for example. I know it's not your direct area, but maybe you could tell us if there's a recommended methodology that is being used.
So what we're using right now at the HSA is a WhatsApp request. So you can WhatsApp a message to 925-6534. You're going to take a picture of your prescription label and send that photo to that number via WhatsApp. And you can pick up the prescription the next day at the hospital pharmacy. Now we are looking at different methods of getting medication out to patients. In the district clinics, we may be able to do a little bit differently. We may be able to start some deliveries. Right now, we're not sure what we actually will have. We're looking at all sorts of means that we can protect the population out there, particularly those elderly patients.
Right.
So if we go for the using the WhatsApp number to make the actual request, right there we cut our presence down in the pharmacy, the traffic down by 50%, because everybody generally makes about 2 trips to come and get their medication. So if we just do the request by WhatsApp, we're good. There's also there's been an online request. I don't have the details on that right now, but that's been in place for a couple of years, that you can place your request for medication online.
Right.
But right now, this is the way we're going with the WhatsApp number. I can't remember what it was now.
I presume that if a person does not have access to WhatsApp, then the next best thing would be to perhaps get a family member who has access.
Have a family member do it, or even send it via just regular SMS.
Right.
And send it to 925-6534.
Right.
If that's a problem, call the flu hotline. The flu hotline will help us find our way through any of these things. Even if they themselves may not have the answer, they can pass the question on to someone else. We want to reduce the traffic on the flu hotline by using this number. But if all else fails, that is manned 24 hours a day.
Thank you so much. And we're going to take a very short commercial break, and then we'll be right back with you. We will just have another 15 minutes, I believe, with the good doctors. So I would encourage everyone to listen in as much as possible. Stay tuned to Talk Today. We'll be right back.
Imagine
Imagine if we all practice safe driving. Imagine if we all refuse single-use plastic. Imagine if we all turned off lights when not in use. We can all do our part in making our Cayman Islands safer, cleaner, and greener. Together, we can achieve. Visit gov.ky/safer, cleaner, greener to learn more.
As our island endures this unprecedented period, we'd like to assure the Cayman community that Foster's is quickly adapting to better serve our customers and keep our team safe. We now have a dedicated shopping hour from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. for those who are more vulnerable within our community, and we ask the public to respect this time. We've put product limits in place on high-demand items to ensure availability for as many of our customers as possible, and have converted all of our hot bars to service for the time being. For more updates, follow Foster's Cayman on Facebook and Instagram.
A public service announcement from Radio Cayman. Coronavirus prevention tip. What is coronavirus? The novel coronavirus, COVID-19, is a new strain of coronavirus that has not been previously identified in humans. What are the symptoms? Common symptoms include respiratory symptoms of fever, cough, shortness of breath, breathing difficulties. In severe cases, coronavirus can cause pneumonia, severe acute respiratory syndrome, and kidney failure. How soon do symptoms occur? Symptoms occur 2 to 10 days after a person has been exposed. Is there a vaccine against coronavirus? Currently, there is no vaccine to protect against COVID-19. When a disease is new, it takes up to a few years for a new vaccine to be developed. For information, you can email questions to flu@hsa.ky or call one of the hotline numbers of 1-800-534-8600 or 947-3077. For the latest updates and information, please visit hsa.ky/coronavirus.
Preventing dengue is as simple as preventing mosquito bites. Use a mosquito repellent, wear protective clothing, and stay indoors during early dawn and dusk when mosquitoes are most active. Control the places around you where mosquitoes breed. Remove stagnant water in outdoor and household settings. As a weekly habit, persons should change the water in vases, clear the water in saucers under potted plants, and ensure air conditioner drip trays are free of stagnant water. Outdoor objects capable of holding water should be kept empty and preferably disposed of or put into dry storage if not used. These include open bottles and tins, watering cans, buckets, empty paint tins, and old vehicle tires. Do your part to control the spread of dengue. The dengue virus is an infectious disease transmitted through mosquito bites. Symptoms may come on as early as 4 days or as late as 3 weeks following an infection. There is no vaccine or specific medication to treat dengue. Symptoms of dengue include high fever, headache, pain behind the eyes, joint and muscle pain, and rash. If persons have any of these symptoms, they should go to the nearest health center or hospital. It is advised to drink lots of liquids and avoid medication that contains aspirin.
Your Radio Cayman 6 p.m. news, Monday through Friday, is brought to you by Logic. Your life connected.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Good afternoon and welcome back to Talk Today. Thank you for staying tuned. We have with us Dr. Williams, the Medical Officer of Health, and Dr. Brown, the Chief Nursing Officer. Just before we broke, we were, of course, discussing various important information. But Dr. Brown, I'm going to come to you in just a second regarding the HSA's particular arrangements in relation to persons visiting the facilities. But I just wanted to repeat for the benefit of a WhatsApp caller, writer. They wanted to have the number once again for the prescription medication. I believe you said it was 925-6534.
I have to look for it.
Okay. I'm fairly certain I was
925-6534.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. We also have a caller on the line. So we've decided we're going to take that call quickly as well. That is to say, the doctors have decided that. Is the caller still there?
Yes, right there.
Hello, good afternoon, ma'am. Welcome to Talk Today.
Good afternoon, Patrick, and to the doctors there, Ms. Brown and Mr. Williams.
Good afternoon.
Listen to me now. I want this to be clear. I called in this morning on OC show, and I mentioned this, and I think what Dr. Lee that said is because of the numbers. When I say numbers, I'm talking about patients that have lupus. When the minister is talking about all the other diseases or illnesses, they're not saying a thing about lupus. But then it was Dr. Lee that said, John Lee, said that it's because of the numbers. I must say this now. I didn't get a chance to say it this morning. There is a number of lupus patients on this island. I am one of them for almost 42 years now. And furthermore, we lost a little young guy, 20-something, just a couple of weeks ago. And okay, with people hear me talking about lupus, knowing that it's not only on the radio that I talk about a lupus, a lot of people say to me, what is the symptoms? So I tell them the symptoms. And they say when they go to doctors with these joint pains, that's one of the symptoms, the doctors tell them that they have arthritis and give them pains for arthritis. But these people need to be checked because that's a good sign that there's a lot more people that have lupus that isn't diagnosed. And when this conference this evening, I keep on two radio. I just turn one down. The other one is on out in the kitchen area. And that's Radio came on too. I like for this evening for this afternoon when they can do another conference. I think it'll be at 2:00, right?
Yes, that's the scheduled time, ma'am.
Yes, that be mentioned because it makes me shiver when I don't hear it mentioned.
Okay, so let me just respond to you, ma'am, very, very quickly. When we speak of chronic conditions, there's so many chronic conditions that it's difficult to list them all out. But we do recognize that someone who has we normally say autoimmune diseases, which is where lupus would fall in, would be considered a chronic condition, and we would pay special attention to them. But it's very, very difficult to stop, usually in the limited time that we have on radio and in press conferences and that stuff, to be able to list out all the chronic conditions that we would be considering when we are looking at special precautions that we need to take.
And
listen now, just 1 minute more.
Sure.
If I can. If in case that I didn't mention this, but Dr. Lee did say is because of the numbers that is with the lupus, why it's not mentioned. This is why I said what I said.
I would think that he means because of the numbers of chronic conditions that we have, that it's difficult to come out and list each one because there are lots of them.
No, Dr. Brown, I was talking about the lupus, and this is what he said.
Yes, ma'am.
It's because of the numbers of the lupus is why.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Thank you very much.
All righty.
Thank you so much for your call.
And I'm going to be listening on two radios for my conference.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. And thanks to all callers who expressed their interest in our WhatsApp messages as well. But we have unfortunately very precious time left with the good doctors. And so if I could ask you, if you do call, please to be as concise as possible in your questions. And that's said with all due respect. But if I could just go directly to the doctors to speak about the issues concerning the HSA's methodology of dealing with patients coming in and so on.
Okay, so the HSA is being very, very proactive about this. Anyone who's been to the HSA recently, to the Georgetown Hospital, Cayman Islands Hospital, but in Cayman we just said the hospital, right? So anyone who's been to the hospital recently will note that we are locked down tightly. All of our doors are locked. And those that are left open have security guards at the doors, and the staff have to show an ID in order to get in, or the patients have to give a clear explanation of why they need to come in. So that is to protect everyone within our walls. We need to limit the number of people in there and get control over who is in and who is out. We allow one parent to be there with a child, and if a woman is in labor, she's allowed to have one person with her. All of this is done to protect our population against the spread of this illness. If you have family in there, we don't stop people bringing things in for the family members, but you cannot enter the building. You would have to leave it with the security and let it stay. If there are any special considerations, by all means, feel free to call someone, any of the extensions within the hospital, and we'll try to assist. Most patients in their rooms who are able to speak have a direct line, an extension in their rooms, and we encourage you to get your family members' extension and feel free to call them directly. We also encourage people to use FaceTime, WhatsApp, call in, just stay in contact with your family members, but to please cooperate with us as we try to protect the patients. We have some very vulnerable patients within our with our rooms who are not going home. We have people who have been discharged and are unable to go home for various reasons, and other people who have not been discharged and won't be able to be discharged. We need to protect them, and we need to protect our staff, and we need to protect our public.
Absolutely. So just for clarity, if I understood you correctly, Dr. Brown, generally people are not allowed visitors except for very specific
very
cases.
Specific cases, yes.
Yes, ma'am. We have a caller on the line, doctors.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon. You're on Talk Today.
Hello.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes. Can I pose this question to Dr. Brown, please? I had an appointment at the Women's Health Clinic, but me and my doctor had a conference call on the same day when it was getting locked down. But that was my reason why we did the call that way. But she had a prescription there for me to pick up that day. And because of that, I didn't hear the time when they had announced about the lockdown, which is in the family clinic. And I need the prescription. I did not get the written prescription because I thought I would pick it up rather than send it to the section where in the front, because I normally pick up my medication in West Bay. How would I be able to ascertain? I've been calling every day from then, and the operators will put me through the dark clinic because they say somebody's there at the desk. But
you're not getting through?
Yes, I'm not getting through, and I really need to find out if it's there. If they could give it to the security, I would go to the security and get it. Now, I also have another issue.
Before you go to the next issue, can I just answer you on this one? Do you have access to email?
Yes, I do.
Okay, email me, hazel.brown@hsa.ky. Give me the details, and I'll try my best to help you out.
Okay, and it will probably come in from my daughter's email because I don't have it myself, but I go through her.
Yeah, that's fine. Just send it. Just send me the details. You'll need to give me your name and the doctor's name, and I will follow it up for you.
Okay. So hazel.brown
at hsa.ky.
Okay. And the other question was that if my mom is 95 and I go to check her with the caregivers to make sure, because at that age they can have not since this is something that doesn't give you signs all the time, but to check her temperature and stuff, and all of a sudden her thermometer has gone down. I am beating my head against the wall. When I had the Alex Canton Foundation thing, you had a stall there, and they were there in droves, and something said to me, you better pick that up, you better pick up. I said, no, we have, and it's gone off, and there's none in the pharmacy that I can get in West Bay. Is there any of you all have any spares I can get?
Put that in the same email. I don't know if we have any, but if we do, I will get you one.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
We have another call on the line. So we'll go directly to that caller. Good afternoon. You're on Talk Today.
Good afternoon, Smith and your panel.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
They're always saying we will self-isolate, but I have a problem there that they're finding somewhere to rent. And I think the doctors know I've been in medical ward here, and I've been discharged. But there's some way you can have people in the public, if they have anywhere that they can call out of the hospital or where, that anyone that wants to self-isolate be able to find accommodation. And again, as I said this morning, I certainly appreciate all these the doctors and staff all in the front line of this epidemic. And I want you to know, I appreciate all that they have done. You have a wonderful staff in the hospital here. Very wonderful staff. But if they can find out, if something's in the public can call somewhere, if they have anywhere, anybody that wants to isolate themselves will be able to get the rent.
Okay, if you have difficulty finding isolation, if you need to be isolated, the NEOC is looking for that. You can call 1-800-534-6555.
No, I'm not talking about temporary. I'm talking about renting an apartment.
Sir.
Well, all we would be dealing is temporary facilities for isolation for the 14 days. That's the only thing that the NEOC is dealing with at this point in time. If you have difficulty finding long-term rental, you'll have to deal with Children and Family Service, Department of Children and Family Services, and probably the Needs Assessment Unit.
Sir, just to let you know,
I put on internet and everything in there, and I didn't realize it's so difficult just to find an apartment. But
yes, sir.
now the flights can't go out; they can't even leave right now.
Yes, sir. I do recall your call from the other day when you asked the question and the specifics thereof, and I have passed that information on to various persons. So, and your information as well, which you gave to our technical person here, and therefore that information is being searched, and somebody will hopefully be in touch with you shortly. But I'd like to thank you very much for your call, sir. Unfortunately, we have to break for the news now, and we will not have the presence of the doctors with us after that, but I'd like to give them an opportunity just for a quick closing comment if there are any additional matters that they'd like to bring to the public's attention.
Yeah, just quickly, and thank you for having us here. Just want to thank to the public that just to remind her that still we don't have a vaccine or a treatment that have proven to be effective and approved by international organizations. So for us now, what we need to do is just respect the isolation requirements that are on island, keep social distance, and hand hygiene. That's the most important we need to do right now.
And just as a follow-up, sorry, I do recognize we're delaying the news here, but just as a quick follow-up, we have received various questions about the types of materials that will tend to maintain the virus longer. And we know that certain metals, the virus stays alive longer, but people are asking things like, what about your hair? What about this? So perhaps we could deal with that immediately after the news and just before the very next guest. Or if not, then I will send a written response to the individual who's writing. Thank you so much, Dr. Brown. Anything else?
Stay safe, K-Man. Stay home. You stay home for us. We go to work for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure. And we're going to go directly to the news.
Thank you.
From district to district, moving through the waters to Cayman Brack and Little Cayman. Your station, your voice. All things Cayman. One radio, many people. This is home.
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman.
There's only 2 species that we have on the island.
Generations present.
Your voice, your choice. For today's biggest news.
Access.
Local, regional, international, this is headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom team.
Today's biggest news.
Government has advised the public to be alert and vigilant in the wake of a fake account claiming to be from the Minister Juliana O'Connor-Connolly approaching members of the public about a cash grant from the Department of Health and Human Services. The account impersonating the minister goes on to offer the individual a link to apply. The information contained in the message is incorrect and poses a potential risk to individuals who go on to click the link. Officials are reminding everyone it is a crime to produce and share disinformation in the Cayman Islands. They're also reminding the public to look to official sources for information on government financial support. One official source, www.gov.ky/coronavirus. Good afternoon, I'm Dion Anglin with your headlines and news elsewhere. The U.S. Health Secretary has said people who have ignored government advice aimed at tackling the coronavirus pandemic are very selfish. Matt Hancock said ministries could take more action if needed after photos emerged showing crowds of people visiting open spaces at the weekend. Emergency legislation that would grant powers aimed at tackling the pandemic is being debated by MPs. And the 2020 Olympic and Paralympic Games in Tokyo have been thrown into further doubt after Canada became the first major country to withdraw. Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe admitted for the first time that the Games could be postponed. Australia's team said it was clear the Games could not go ahead, while the British Olympic Association said it was unlikely to be able to send a team. The International Olympic Committee is expected to decide in 4 weeks' time. That's a wrap of your headlines. I'm Dion Anglin.
Stay in touch with Radio Cayman for the latest in news and information.
Follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, www.radiocayman.gov.ky.
Radio Cayman, your voice, your choice, your radio.
Start getting your debt under control with a debt consolidation loan from Fidelity Bank. At Fidelity, your loan decision is quick with no runaround. Plus, with competitive interest rates and fees, we will help you reduce your monthly payments and get you back to living again. Don't let the burden of overwhelming debt tie you down this year. Call Fidelity today and let's make it happen with a Fidelity Bank debt consolidation loan. Fidelity, we're good for you.
For nearly 20 years, Kingsport Center has been the heart of the Cayman fitness and wellness community. In order to ensure the welfare of all, we will be temporarily closing on March 23rd, reopening on April 6th, unless otherwise notified by the Cayman Islands government. During these trying times, we encourage everyone to maintain a healthy lifestyle, mind, body, and soul. We look forward to continuing providing you with world-class service in the very near future. Remain strong and continue to show the world the power of Cayman unity. Kingsport Center, your one-stop shop for fitness, recreation, and relaxation.
Honey, our fridge has stopped working again. Everything in the freezer is melting. We need to get this repaired right away. I'm calling Brand Source Service.
When you need the very best appliance service, call Brand Source Service at 623-5000. Offering service and installation of all brands and models of appliances. Brand Source Service is Cayman's source for appliance parts and repairs with qualified and experienced technicians and the island's largest stock of appliance parts. Brand Source Service will have your repair completed in a flash. So, whatever the problem is, call the experts at 623-5000. Brand Source Service, Dorsey Drive, Industrial Park. Telephone 623-5000.
This is a public service announcement from your Radio Cayman, your community radio station. Here are some coronavirus prevention tips.
Home isolation means staying indoors and completely avoiding contact with other people. You need to do this if you have symptoms of COVID-19. If you are practicing home isolation, you should stay in a well-ventilated room with a window to outside that can be opened separate from other people in your home. Keep the door closed and use a separate bathroom from the rest of the household if available. If you have to share these facilities, regular sterilization will be required. Consider drawing up a bathroom schedule for washing or bathing and have the isolated person using the facilities last.
For the latest updates and information, please visit hsa.ky/public-health/coronavirus or gov.ky/coronavirus.
Radio Cayman News.
Local grocery stores are forced to implement product limits after panic buying by residents.
The government is taking in all seriousness the magnitude and the severity of this matter.
A reminder from the Chief Medical Officer, all people who have arrived on flights are required to self-isolate.
I think the most likely decision 3 weeks from now is an extension of the current state.
Radio Cayman, your voice, your choice for today's biggest news.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Good afternoon and welcome back to Talk Today. I'm Patrick Schmid and I'm standing in for Sterling Dwayne Banks. It's a pleasure to be here with you and also to be graced by the presence of a well-known gentleman, Dr. Mark Lockhart. Welcome, Dr. Lockhart.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Patrick.
It's a pleasure, sir. And Dr. Lockhart will, of course, tell us what he's here about in short order. But just before I go directly to Dr. Lockhart, I just remind the listening audience that the lines are open and Dr. Lockhart is willing to take questions from the public. The numbers being 949-8037 or courtesy of Flow. Toll-free number is 1-800-534-8255. And finally, just by way of reminder, the doctors that just left, Dr. Williams and Dr. Brown, were mentioning the limitations, or rather the guidelines, and indeed the amendment to the public health law that were recently passed by Cabinet in order to ensure that we take the best precautions necessary. Those are available on caymanprepared.ky or hazardmanagement.ky. So without further ado, Dr. Lockhart.
Well, thanks for having me, Patrick. It's a pleasure to be here to be able to offer, hopefully, a little bit of insight and information for the listening public. As we know, there's a lot of uncertainty throughout this whole period that we've been experiencing, and that uncertainty has also led to where our normal routines have been disrupted. Those are two major things that are issues that we as human beings require.
Yes.
Irrespective of where we're from, what culture, what language we speak. We like to know or have an idea of what's going to happen tomorrow, what's coming up next week, look in our schedules to see where we're planning to go, and so on and so forth.
Yes.
That's been disrupted significantly.
Of course.
The second thing is that we are creatures of pattern, so we like normalcy. We generally wake up at around the same time, most of us. We usually get to a point where we don't even have to use an alarm. We probably wake up a minute or two around the same time. We generally arrive at the same place, park in the same spaces, go and eat at the same places, and that's human nature.
Yes, sir.
So when we have periods of uncertainty, we as human beings fall back on our normalcy or on our schedules and patterns. Unfortunately, we're in a period where there is both uncertainty and our normalcy and routines have been significantly disrupted.
Yes.
During other major world events, for example, like the last World War and World War II, many of the world's leaders made it a point of trying to keep normalcy as best as possible. So Franklin Delano Roosevelt in the United States, for example, made it a point to insist on their professional sports leagues continuing. Soldiers that went overseas, they were replaced by others to keep those leagues going because he and others around him realized that having that sense of normalcy and that outlet helped to boost morale, productivity, and coping overall. So churches were kept going, different activities, little leagues, sports, and so on. Fast forward to where we are now with a pandemic, and we see that isolation is now the go-to public health intervention that we need. And that isolation causes disruption. We know as mental health professionals that isolation in general is not good for our mental health. So really what we want to get across, and I say we because the mental health community has really come out in force. Behind the scenes, a lot of work is being done in terms of gathering all the names, gathering commitments for us to provide relief to one another, to offer support in terms of setting up an information line, having backup, reaching out to those that need the help and guidance, those with underlying stressors and mental health issues, and those with emerging types of stress, dealing with kids at home, working from home, trying to manage additional jobs and wearing different hats. So there's a lot of stress.
Yes.
So the first thing I wanted to get across is that accept that. Deal with where we are from reality, that yes, we're all going to be prone to be a little bit more frazzled right now and a little bit more stressed than usual. Yes. But it's to be expected. And it's really us reestablishing a routine and a certain amount of normalcy. And that comes with actually setting a schedule, writing things down. Mm-hmm. I like to give the example that you could probably go into almost any business or any house in the Cayman Islands and find a calendar. And we keep a calendar on the wall. We may at times get slightly confused and wonder, is today the 21st, 23rd or so on, but we're generally, most of us, within a day or two. But we still keep that calendar because it helps to give us, again, a sense of normalcy and structure. Yes. So one of the things I'm advising everyone to start to do, if you haven't already, is to write out a schedule, especially those of you that have kids at home and have several obligations. You have to be working from home at the same time. You have to plan to see when you need to go to the supermarket or who's going to do certain things. I would advise that we literally come up with a nice little schedule, jot things down. Naturally, we might not be able to follow it to the T. There are times it's going to have to be adjusted, but even the act of writing it, preparing it, helps to give us, again, a certain sense of normalcy.
Absolutely. And I presume, sir, that it would probably be correct to say that, our previous guests were talking about the fluid situation. In doing such a thing, which of course would be extremely constructive, productive, give a sense of purpose, etc., it is important to remember that that situation is fluid and we may have to adjust that schedule. Correct. Yes. Dr. Lockhart, thank you very much for that initial intro. That's given us a lot of food for thought to start with. But we must go to a short commercial break, and we'll be right back on Talk Today. Stay tuned.
Thank you.
Vamped Motors is putting the brakes on for coronavirus. Strong in service and safety, Vamped Motors remains open to customers and is taking all extra health precautions needed. To eliminate cross-contamination, protective covers are being used on vehicles being serviced that are then cleaned and sanitized before they're returned to owners. All test drive vehicles are being wiped down thoroughly before and after every test drive. Vamped Motors is doing these things and much more to ensure the safety of everyone who comes through their doors. They've even set up outside seating for anyone who prefers enjoying a fresh breeze while waiting to collect their vehicle. Let's all stay safe, keep our hands clean, and practice social distancing while we work through this together. Staying open to serve your automotive needs. Vamped Motors on Walkers Road. Come see us. ValueMed Pharmacy is your community care partner for health and wellness needs. We offer convenient prescription processing at the counter and online at value-medpharmacy.com. That's VALU-medpharmacy.com, with pickup available at the Walkers Road or Boddentown location. We also accept transfer prescriptions from other pharmacies. More than just a pharmacy, shop ValueMed for personal care and beauty products from trusted brands, perfume and gift sets, Hallmark and greeting cards, baby clothes, footwear, handbags, swimwear, home decor, toys, school supplies, and stationery. And home convalescence aids like wheelchairs, walkers, crutches, canes, and hospital beds. With 2 locations to serve you, Walkers Road in Georgetown and in Evron Plaza, Boddentown. Visit ValueMed, more than just a pharmacy.
The Chief Medical Officer of the Cayman Islands, in an attempt of preventing the spread of COVID-19 in the community, has issued the following requirement. All persons who have arrived on flights from outside of the Cayman Islands since Monday, 16th March 2020, you are required to self-isolate for 14 days following your arrival. There are no exceptions. Non-compliance will result in a fine of $1,000 and imprisonment for 6 months on conviction. If this applies to you, please stay in your home or your temporary residence. Again, all persons who have arrived on flight from outside of the Cayman Islands since Monday, 16th March 2020, you are required to isolate for 14 days following your arrival.
A public service announcement from Radio Cayman. Coronavirus prevention tip.
For persons who think they may have symptoms, you owe it to your family, to your friends, and to the community. You have a moral obligation, if you think that you may have been exposed, to withdraw from community activities and to stay at home until a safe period has expired. The elderly among us are particularly vulnerable, and not isolating in many instances will be the same as imposing upon those people a death sentence. Please understand the seriousness of that. We are encouraging everyone to be as responsible as you can possibly be during this very, very difficult and critical time.
For the latest updates and information, please visit hsa.ky/public-health/coronavirus or gov.ky/coronavirus.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Good afternoon and welcome back to Talk Today. My name is Patrick Schmid and I'm standing in for Sterling Dwayne Ebanks. It is my pleasure to have with us here in the studio Dr. Mark Lockhart and of course who is at Behavioral Health Associates, Cayman. And Dr. Lockhart, just before we broke for the break, you were speaking about the challenge of dealing with the restrictions that are placed on us, with not knowing what is to come, etc. Perhaps you'd like to.
Yes. So as I was saying, this is, and as you rightly pointed out and the previous guest, that we are in a very fluid situation. We're getting feedback every day on numbers of cases, on where they're growing, on reports of speculative medications that may work or not work, or certain types of people that supposedly have certain reactions or don't. And so that brings up another thing, that with the fluidity in this situation, it's going to tempt us to try to search for as much information as possible. Again, that's human nature. Right. We're going to dig to find as much as we can. Yes. Unfortunately, we're in a world of information overload and abundance and misinformation at the same time. And first thing I woke up this morning, I heard certain reports about, social media misinformation about what's supposedly happening in Russia and so on. We have to be very careful. There's a temptation for us to be on the phone, on the computer, searching for as much information as we can, because again, that's that inner drive for us to hoard. Yes. And gather.
Yes.
So we may hoard toilet paper, but we also hoard information. But all of that hoarding is not beneficial to our state of equilibrium. It makes us more anxious. It fuels things like insomnia and worry and irritability. I'm not saying we go to the opposite, that we just turn off everything and are not aware, but we have to find that happy medium. I heard Dr. Brown earlier mention finding reputable information. So we should go to our public health websites, like at HSA. We can look at the CDC, maybe Public Health England, WHO. Watch the news just to get some information. But I generally put a period right there. Yes. I may skim on other things here and there, but I'm not going to delve too deep into things that I'm not sure if it's verifiable type information.
Yes.
That helps significantly with our control and lowering our anxiety.
And of course, sort of the information emanating from organizations like the Center for Disease Control, like exactly. the World Health Organization, this will be where all of the other spin-off social media articles, and even some of the articles in reputable dailies from all over the world will emanate. They, exactly. A reporter will take that information and convert it into information that they think their readers will find it easier to digest. But
exactly.
But some of the message can be lost.
Exactly.
Yes.
So that's extremely important. Now, we all know about the major interventions that all of us as healthcare workers tell everyone, that, you want to watch your nutrition, which is extremely valuable. You want to make sure that you get some exercise. You want to get sleep. Again, you want to manage the amount of information we take in. But there are other things that we can do and we really need to do, especially with isolation. Absolutely. Because, again, this is unique. So there's certain things that we've come up with, and this list is not exhaustive, but setting up a communication bank. And when we say communication bank, there are many people at home. There are young people that have lots of technological savvy. There are others that have experience or connections with reaching out by video and other forms of social media to use it in a positive way to connect with our elders or those that are isolated. Mm-hmm. We have to remember that in our cultural perspective, there are many of our elderly that are not that familiar with video chatting and conferencing and so on. So going back to the old-time telephone is very important. Absolutely. And last but not least, while we want to keep social distancing, we still want to connect, especially with the elderly, in a safe way.
Right.
So if it's having a certain person do visit and stand at the door and keep a certain distance, talk to them through a window, talk to them when they're on the patio and you stay outside, whatever it is. Yes. We want to be careful of the complete isolation. Yes. So when we talk about isolation, we're talking about isolation from a medical public health standpoint, keeping a distance, keeping away from others, being careful of that contact. But we're not talking about mental and emotional isolation.
Right.
We need that stimulation and that connection. That's what's going to help to carry us through.
And what better time than now for those of us who are not as familiar, to actually perhaps take the time to familiarize ourselves with some of the technology that hitherto we've not been using.
Exactly. And that brings up another point, learning. Learning is a major point that we can use right now. And I just put it in broadly learning. My personal example, I have a guitar at home that was given to me when I was 11 years old. I played it for a little bit and I put it aside. I've never had the time to learn it.
That was only about 5 years ago, right?
I wish. So one of the things that I would do if I had the time, because I'm still working at this present time, but would be to learn it. There are lots of things online. You can go on YouTube. There are easy classes. Learn it in how many minutes. Mm-hmm. You can practice, do things like that. Now, again, I'm not saying everybody has the wherewithal of having a musical instrument laying around, but there are many other things you can learn. You can look up videos on gardening, videos on maybe somewhere you would like to go after all of this to reward yourself. Mm-hmm. Maybe something you would like to do or learn about, or again, a place you would like to see. The fascinating thing about it, all of these things are on the internet and available to us. I'm seeing that many museums have now gone online with virtual museums. So if you Google things like, different museums in New York, in France, and so forth, you can actually go online and look at all the artwork that they have now virtually, and you can learn how to maneuver through that and so on. That occupies time, and it also occupies your focus. Right. It takes you away from worrying and overdoing it and watching the latest stats of how many people have recently got the disease or passed away to actually being mindful and helping your mental health overall. Yes, sir. It's also important to note that mental health is public health. They're not separate. So it's very important that we do involve ourselves in these different activities to help our overall functioning and how we deal with fighting off any type of disease or infirmity.
Right.
We know that our immune system is as connected to our brain and mind as it is to the rest of our body. So our outlook, the things that we do, the thoughts that we dwell on play a big role in terms of how we respond when we are or if we are dealing with certain viruses or microbes in general.
Yes, sir. Just to ask a question on that point, sir, for clarity again, and putting it in my layman's terms. In other words, you're saying, I believe, that if you have a relatively positive outlook, if you're looking at down the line and saying we will overcome this, that you're more likely in that frame of mind to have a better overall physical health as well, as opposed to dwelling on the negativity of the immediate problem.
100%, Patrick.
Okay.
And that's what we want to get across. Not false hope, We're not just throwing out words without deeds, but we're mobilized. We're focused on this. When I say we, all of the medical community worldwide is focused on this disease at this point.
Yes.
And I have a lot of faith. I don't think it's false faith or hope. It's based on history and science.
Absolutely.
As I've said before, when we look back on smallpox, measles, mumps, rubella, look back on vaccinations that were developed. I'd mentioned a while back that 10, 15 years ago, there was a big movement about stopping vaccines. And people believed it was wrong and bad, and we saw that was a failure.
Of course.
And I think we can rest fairly confidently on the fact that it's a matter of time before we will find a way and a vaccine to defeat this virus.
Yes, sir.
We're not there yet, so it's very important to continue with the isolation that we're doing, the social distancing, and also realize for those of us that feel a bit helpless, that is a major contribution.
Yes.
So I've had people speak to me and say, I don't know what I can do. I'm at home. I'm here with the kids. I'm working part-time from home a little bit, but I'm feeling frustrated. I wish there was more I could do. And I tell them, you're doing a lot.
Right.
You're actually helping to keep down the transmission of this virus in our community, number one. You keeping well and washing your hands and following the things that you're doing is keeping you out of the hospital. It's keeping you out of the medical system. Being safe at home, not going out, is keeping you from being injured or having some other illness that brings you into the hospital and occupies and takes up the time and attention of the medical practitioner. So it gives us the space, the time, and the availability of being able to deal with the major issue at hand.
Yes, sir. Dr. Lockhart, we have a caller on the line. If I could just go straight to that call. Good afternoon. You're on Talk Today.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon,
gentlemen.
sir. Good afternoon.
I have a question for Dr. Lockhart because I get a lot of, I know Dwayne knows that I get a lot of information on all kinds of things. But I got something the other day from one quite famous Nobel Prize winning doctor. And it's about the eighth element. And I'm sure Dr. Lockhart knows what that is. The eighth element is oxygen.
Yes, sir.
He's talking about how it's a cure for all 230 types of cancer. He won the Nobel Prize in 1931. But unfortunately, the United States FDA, the pharmaceutical companies, and others who were into making money told him he couldn't use it because they couldn't patent it to make money. I go back and I look at the different things that happened over the years, including when we had the swine flu, we had this, we had that, we had, everything you could think about. And as soon as somebody came up with a vaccine, there was no more of that. And what hurts me, what really bothers me, Doctor, is the fact that today we have people, I have friends, and this is what makes it so hurtful, that have been suffering from cancer and some different types of cancer. There's one right now in a hospital. She's dying. And because of the pharmaceutical companies and the power that they have in the FDA and the CUC and all these people are dying because they can't get a hold of this thing, because the pharmaceutical companies, the amount of money, they are making about $173 billion a year.
Sorry, caller, pardon the interruption, but I believe you had a question for the doctor?
Yeah, the question is, Doc.
Yes, sir.
Are we waiting for another vaccine to come out now and then? Because this thing called oxygen, when Jesus created the first human being, he breathed his breath in his nose. That thing is called oxygen. And if your hemoglobin is well saturated with oxygen, there is no disease no disease can have any place in it, in your body. And I don't know why we don't hear about things like that. I'll leave it there. God bless.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
So oxygen does play a major role, as we know. Oxygen is the fuel with water to all living things, primarily. And oxygen many times is really considered as a medical intervention when it's used on an emergency basis. While I have my differences and challenges with the pharmaceutical companies and the insurance companies, I don't want to leave them out of it. I would not go to necessarily the extent that the caller went to.
Right.
I do feel that if there was a cure for cancer, and I usually don't like to use that statement, cure for cancer, because there's so many different types of cancer and different pathological reactions in terms of how fast they grow and many different characteristics to it. I do feel, though, that there are many scientists around the world that are working hard to find a cure, and I really don't feel that if there was, that's something that would be kept away.
Yes.
And that brings up something else, too. There are rumors that are around and have always been and will be around that there are numbers of patients, for example, in the Cayman Islands that have COVID-19 and aspects of the government are hiding this or not publicizing this. I can say that I've lived long enough in the Cayman Islands and been integrated deep enough into this community to know that you can run in Cayman, but you can't hide.
Absolutely. No secrets in Cayman.
No secrets in Cayman. We do not have any patients that are being hidden away. There is no plan to hide or to find out that there are cases and not let that be known completely and transparently. Because if we do that, we would be contributing to the destruction of the Cayman Islands, and none of us here want that.
Absolutely, sir. And sir, we do have a caller on the line, and so I'm just going to go to the caller quickly. Caller, if I could just ask you if you have a question for Dr. Lockhart, if you could just keep it as concise as possible, please, because at 2:00 we will be breaking for the national press briefing. So good afternoon and welcome to Talk Today.
Good afternoon, Patrick.
Good afternoon,
Good
ma'am.
afternoon to Dr. Lockhart.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Dr. Lockhart, I think you know who I am.
I certainly do. We just spoke a few days ago.
Yes, sir. Do you see what I was saying about the organs?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. We're not going to go no further than that. You know what you have to do.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, you've got to be very, very clean in this. You know, like, nostrils is the tunnel to your stomach. So we breathe in, breathe out. We need to, when we're washing our face, we need to wash our nostrils too. We need to gargle stuff. You know, people not doing that. When we go to the bank, we need to have on gloves. When you get home, take off those clothes, put them in the sun, have a bath.
Yes, ma'am.
And I am one person and is taking this very, very serious. Dr. Lockhart, I am telling you this, that some of the people I see, I don't have any jitters because I got plenty of costumes to make, so I'm not going to go mad. I already mad. Okay? But carnival will happen. And I cannot think, I mean, it reminds me of certain things, and this is why I have to work. What I am saying, if they're not careful, and if they don't listen to the Premier, the governor, and the health, and as far as I'm concerned, if I didn't lock this place down because they're not listening, they all deserve it. Money is one of the nastiest things in the world. And I mean, people got young children, and when I get inside of my car, before I even get in, I spray my clothes, I spray my car out with Lysol. You got to know how to take off the gloves. The mask that I even take off, I spray everything while my gloves are on, and I spray them. I spray my car wheel. I spray my hair. And if you're not cleanly, that's why the Bible says, next to God is cleanliness, right? Am I right or wrong?
No, you're right. You're right.
Okay. So they need to listen. Listen, and when I say listen, Dr. Lookhart, what I'm telling these people, it's coming from the bottom of my heart.
Yes, ma'am.
If you don't listen, well, I don't know what to tell you, but I will tell you this. It will bring you up in the graveyard. So all families to the Cayman Islands, listen to the Premier. Listen to Alden one more time. This is not about the doc. This is not about anything. Listen to the governor. Listen to the minister. Listen to the doctors. Keep clean. Keep away from people. People are not doing some of these things.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm sorry, we're going to have to leave it there because we have two more callers on the line, and Dr. Lockhart's time with us is unfortunately very limited. But we do thank you for your call and appreciate it.
Yes. So that caller made an excellent point, and I think two things that she's really trying to get across. Number one, that this is serious.
Right.
Don't underestimate what she's saying, because we're seeing around the world. We just saw it with spring breakers in the U.S. We know what happened, many of us do, in Italy in terms of the spread there.
Yes.
This should and will and needs to be taken seriously.
Yes, sir.
No one is amplifying or exaggerating the importance. Point number two, in terms of just cleanliness and hygiene, we do have a minimum recommendation that we make as healthcare practitioners and providers to wash your hands and to take very cautious care about how well you wash it, at least for 20 seconds, to keep distance. But above and beyond that, taking your shoes off when you go in, changing your clothes if you've come in contact, and extra hygiene type tips, just as the caller had made, are excellent, and I support that.
Thank you, sir. And so we do have two more callers if you're prepared to take those, sir. I'll go directly to the calls. Good afternoon. You're on Talk Today.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, doctor.
Good afternoon, sir.
You might catch my voice, but I then took a flu shot, and I have a flu, so you might recognize.
I know. I recognize you, sir.
Listen, just a little colloquy with you if I can, because I have a few little questions, but I want to find out first. Do you think that this virus, even after a vaccine is found, will be around as we would call then a severe, like a deadly flu? Do you think it's going to be something that's going to be around even after we find the vaccine, or is it something you think we would hope to eradicate?
That's a very excellent question, and for me to answer that at this point, I would be speculating, and I don't want to do that.
Okay, the reason I asked it is because of this. I have a feeling that it might just be because of how the global event. I mean, I think that the actual population, I think mankind is actually being the worst enemy to actually planet Earth by actually various things.
Yes.
So I'm actually using that as my preface.
Yes.
What I'm about to say. I have a feeling that this is going to be around, but I think we will find the vaccine, and I'm sure it will be found in short term.
Yes.
But if that premise is actually correct, that this is going to be around as a deadly flu, then it leads to a question as to whether the world is going to have to consider, or as a government may have to consider, universal health care. Because many billions of people will not have access to the vaccine because of affordability or insurance.
Yes.
So perhaps you could spend a bit of time broadly discussing that concern. I mean, it's just an open discussion point.
Yes.
I mean, as you say, we don't have the answers to it, but it is a possibility, and it is something that perhaps leads to an actual valid open discussion. So I'll actually leave it there for you to expand upon.
Thank you, sir. Excellent. So first of all, the most dangerous animal on this planet is the human animal. We have caused the majority of destruction on this planet. And without going into too much detail, the cause or the reason that this virus is where it is, it's not because of blaming one ethnicity or one country, but it's because of our unbridled and unhinged destruction of this planet that has led to where we are. So I agree with you on that spot. This highlights again the need for a proper discussion about healthcare. I'm not necessarily prepared to go all the way to say universal healthcare because it has certain pitfalls also, but I do lean in that direction and feel that after this, this is just going to, I think, set the table for many countries around the world to sit down and realize that we need to address a proper approach to providing health care for our citizens.
Yes, sir. Certainly it seems that the international cooperation would pave the way to the extent possible, but obviously politics and so on will inevitably interfere with that.
Correct.
And I do recognize, sir, just for the benefit of the listening audience as well, that you are here, I know, focused on the primarily on how the mental health aspect of things influences the overall position. And so just by way of reminder to the audience, we will have to have a short commercial break, but immediately following that we have two callers, unless we can go straight to the callers. So we'll skip the commercial break for now and welcome the first of the two callers that have been patiently waiting. Thank you so much for waiting. Good afternoon. You're on Talk Today.
Good afternoon, Patrick, and good afternoon, Dr. Lockhart.
Good afternoon.
I am very, very, very concerned about the mental people in West Bay in particular. I know they're all over the island, but in particular in West Bay, where they're still walking around and they're mostly asking for food now. Before they were asking for money, but now they're asking for food. And what has happened in West Bay, Dr. Lockhart, is that a lot of people that used to be out there and buy them something or give them money is no longer out there. They're at home where they're requested to be. But does the government have a place where we can put these mental people, because they are out there, they could contract that disease and you know, it would spread rapidly, as we all know. So I'm wondering if they have some place where we can put those people in, see that they have a bath and they're fed and things like that. If you have an answer, Dr. Lockhart, I would appreciate hearing it. I guess the rest of the people too. Thanks for your time and thanks for being on the radio. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Dr. Lockhart.
Thank you,
God
ma'am.
bless you all.
God bless you too. You sound familiar. You sound like somebody I know. Thank you for calling. The caller brings up an excellent point, and it's interesting that I just read last night, as a matter of fact, in some of the journal-type articles that I read, that there's a serious mental health concern about the homeless population in larger jurisdictions, especially in the United States, where you have more people who are homeless and in prison with mental health conditions than you have in mental health hospitals or in treatment. We are not to that level here, but we have our fair share of those with mental health and substance abuse issues that do not have a set place to stay.
Right.
And in times where isolation is a public health requirement to a certain extent, it puts an undue burden on them.
Yes.
And it puts a burden on all of us, because if any of these people were to become infected and not have a set abode, of course it would increase the risk for us all.
Right.
So we are actively looking at options and places temporarily for those that may require it. Unfortunately, I can't give you a clear answer as to where, because that's something that we're still working on. And as you know, one of my primary passions for years has been to get a long-term mental health care facility.
Yes, sir.
And this is just such a case where it would have been functioning and playing a vital role.
Right.
So I know it is being constructed. I hope that plan continues,
Right.
and I hope it's not forgotten with everything that's going on. And we see the need now when we're looking for spaces and places to treat those with unique and special types of disorders that need the treatment.
Thank you, Dr. Lockhart. We have two more callers on the line. What I'd like to ask of the callers, if they could perhaps state their questions, and then after we've heard all of the questions, then perhaps Dr. Lockhart can address each one. So we'll go directly to the remaining calls. Good afternoon, you're on Talk Today.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon to Dr. Lockhart, and thank you to coming to the radio.
You're very welcome, sir. Thank you.
Hopefully we'll have him again soon.
First, I would like publicly to thank the government and the premier of this country for the measures they put to face this serious disease spreading all over the world. And I think the response of the government was very good, timely, and I think it is no time now for politics or for rumors in Facebook or in any time. It's time for unity in this country to face this serious issue. I think it is time for people to listen to every instruction, doctors, the chief medical officer, the doctors in this country, to listen to instruction. What the government doing is today is important, and we need to see people who have expert, doctors who have expert, to come to the radio every day and give people the right instruction. And I think the government is doing the right thing, and I never support the government unless they are right, and I see them, they are doing the right thing, and I publicly thank them for every measures they are trying to protect the people of this country. And it is not time for blaming games or play politics or anything like that.
Thank you, sir. Could I ask you if you have a question for Dr. Lockhart?
Yes. My question, you mentioned just earlier in your conversation with the caller before about the the mental health facility in East End. I think it's built in East End now. It's something needed, and I know it was your passion, Dr. Lockhart, to build this facility because it's needed. We have, as the caller before me says, too much homeless people roaming the streets, especially in District West Bay, Bodentown, Georgetown. Those three areas in Cayman is very, very too much people roaming the street, have mental illness, and some of them, they are not mentally ill but homeless. They have no place to stay. And I think the government needs to consider those people in disaster like this. And my second question, I have a very serious concern about what happened in Shati Hospital about this patient who come from Italy in the cruise ship, have this illness, and then he died in the hospital. I concerned about what is the real measures being taken about that hospital. What is have been done to quarantine, because the circle of this virus is life of this virus is 14 days. What is being done to quarantine the patient, to quarantine the staff, everyone who work in the hospital to be quarantined in one place for 14 days? Is that being done? Thank you. What is your advice? And I thank you for coming to the radio today. And I ask people, encourage them to listen to only one thing.
Thank you, sir. We're going to have to go to the next call, I'm afraid. But thank you so much for your questions. Good afternoon, caller. You're on Talk Today. We have Dr. Lockhart with us.
Good afternoon, Lockhart, Mr. Schmidt.
Yes, sir.
I won't be too long. First of all, I want to congratulate again the Premier and his team and the governor and the deputy governor, because the hard decisions they've had to make is one thing, but getting all the business people to agree and follow up with him, that takes a great leader. And I think Mr. Allah proved himself now to be a great leader of men. And thank God we have him running this country right now and the other cabinet with him. But I think there's soon will be a cure, but be all the way until about mid-August that they have a cure. Prayer does work things, but sometimes you don't see it until afterwards. But there's a lot of times, and I can mention a few which I've mentioned on the station before, that some of these big companies have cures and they do not want to reveal it until they can make money from it.
Sir, I'm sorry. Could you please formulate that as a question for the good doctor?
No, not really. I just want to make some statements about a few things there.
Sir, we're really just limiting it to questions right now for the doctor, as we only have approximately 5 more minutes on with him. So if you have a question, by all means, please let us know.
No, not really. Some statements I wanted to, but it's okay then. I'll sign off.
Thank you so much for your call, sir. I appreciate it.
So thank you for those questions. I'll answer the last one first regarding the issue at Health City. I have confidence in the Public Health Department, the Chief Medical Officer, in terms of their approach to addressing that situation in Health City. Just a quick thing. Whenever we are at the beginning of any type of major epidemic, or let alone a pandemic, the initial cases that come to the forefront bring with it a lot of emotion and engender many times a certain amount of stigma.
Right.
So I'm old enough that when I was in medical school, the HIV/AIDS crisis came to the forefront. And I was actually halfway through my medical training, and I can remember separate quarters being set up for those that were positive for HIV. I remember the stigma about not touching. I remember the whole issue with Magic Johnson and the NBA. And so what generally happens is we're going to have cases. We have cases. Yes. The first case, unfortunately or fortunately, was at Health City. We will have other cases, right, and I'm sure we're going to have them at the other hospital. Right. And then we're going to be asking the same question. So it's putting in the protocol. It's not necessarily now shaming or blaming a particular institution because they accepted a patient in need of care. Right. Number one. Number two, remember that part of our economic model is based on tourism coming in and people flying to this island. So that's one of the risks that we had to mitigate. And again, I support what everyone is saying, that the approach of the government as a whole has been very robust, focused, and focused in the best interest of our community and every last one of us living in this country.
Yes, sir.
Second thing, with the mental health facility, it is a needed facility, and I think as years go on and things like this happen, it just highlights the importance. One thing I'd like to throw out very quickly is I don't want to forget the 16 or 17 Caymanians that are right now in Jamaica.
Right.
We have people in Jamaica, many of them have been there many, many years, just because they have chronic long-term mental health issues. And they're isolated there. I wonder how they feel about being isolated away and wonder what's going on here. So that's another reason why we need this, not just for those who are here and need it and those who are homeless, But we also have our people in exile that need to come back and be treated at home.
Absolutely. And sir, if I could just say that I think that that everyone feels a sense of appreciation for the many efforts that have been done, in particular by the healthcare community in general, and of course by the leadership, our government, the Honourable Premier, etc., as has been mentioned frequently, and the daily updates that we get and so on. But I'd just like to say that I hope that we will have an opportunity to discuss a bit more about the other aspect of things, which I think people are not yet focusing on, but will soon feel very, very soon if they're not already feeling it, which is that sense of helplessness that you mentioned earlier, lack of productivity, and the things that emanate from that.
Yes. I'll be glad to come back at some point, because I know this is going to be ongoing for a while, and I think we're going to need to get the relevant and concise and appropriate information to give us those tools to handle things. So I'll be glad to come back.
Yes, sir. I mean, we're not dismissing you by any chance, by any in any way, unless you absolutely have to go. But I believe that we're going to get a notification here whenever we're ready to go to the press briefing. So if you're okay to stay until that occurs, then
certainly.
Am I okay with that, Joel? Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much. So, sir, is it of the various topics that have come up? Of the various topics that come up, in terms of focusing on those going forward, and just before I've been informed that we need to take a news break as well, but I presume that we have quite a few things that we can still discuss about how to tackle those issues.
Yes, there's quite a lot.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So without further ado, I'd like to thank Dr. Lockhart again for his presence. It is a privilege to have him here.
Thank you for having me. And again, I'll make my schedule and time available to come back.
Thank you so much, sir. And we're going to go directly to the news break.
Today's biggest news.
Radio K-Man.
It's only 2 species that we have here on the island.
Generations present.
Your voice, your choice. For today's biggest news.
Access. Local, regional, international. This is headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom team.
Today's biggest news.
Another small earthquake in less than 24 hours. This one reported at 11:52 this morning, 47 kilometers southeast of East End. The magnitude 4.3 quake was a little shallower than the one over the weekend at 9.3 kilometers. On Sunday, U.S. Geological Survey reported a 4.6 magnitude earthquake 51 kilometers south of East End at a depth of about 10 kilometers. There are no confirmed reports of damage or injuries in either instance. Good afternoon, I'm Dion Anglin with your headlines and news elsewhere. South Korea has reported the lowest number of new coronavirus cases since infection rates peaked 4 weeks ago, fueling hope Asia's worst outbreak outside China may be abating. The country recorded 64 new cases of COVID-19 in the last 24 hours, taking the total to 8,961 with 111 deaths. But health officials warn against complacency, saying the country still faces a long war against the infection. And at least 23 people have died in one of Bogota's largest jails after what the authorities are calling a mass breakout attempt amid rising tensions over coronavirus. Colombia's Justice Minister Margarita Cabello said 83 inmates were injured during a riot at La Modelo prison. That's a wrap of your headlines. I'm Dion Anglin.
Stay in touch with Radio Cayman for the latest in news and information.
Follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, www.radiocayman.gov.ky.
Radio Cayman, your voice, your choice, your radio.
To protect the health of staff and customers, Water Authority Cayman has ceased providing face-to-face service and closed its office to the public until further notice. Only essential services that ensure customers have water supply will be provided. Customers can still conduct business with the authority electronically. If you need to pay a bill, visit our website, waterauthority.ky, and click on the Pay My Bill button. Payments can also be made via the local banks. Customers can contact our customer service team by emailing info@waterauthority.ky or calling 949-2837. Customers in Cayman Brac who require truck water can continue to make requests by calling 948-1403. For updates and important messages from the Water Authority, visit our website, waterauthority.ky, and our social media pages.
At Canine Resort and Spa, your dog gets the red carpet treatment. That's why people trust us and pets love us. Offering doggy daycare, boarding, training, and grooming services for any breed, size, or style. From head to tail, we'll make your dog smile.
Choose from 4 grooming packages, from the basic bronze package of a hydrobath, shampoo and conditioner, wash and blowout, to the platinum package including spa services like a doggy massage and berry facial. Canine will help your pet look picture perfect. Receive a loyalty card where your 6th grooming package is free. Limited availability.
Visit canineresort.com for details on grooming packages, doggy daycare, and resort services. Canine Resort and Spa, where the posh dogs go.
For nearly 20 years, Kingsport Center has been the heart of the Cayman fitness and wellness community. In order to ensure the welfare of all, we will be temporarily closing on March 23rd, reopening on April 6th, unless otherwise notified by the Cayman Islands government. During these trying times, we encourage everyone to maintain a healthy lifestyle, mind, body, and soul. We look forward to continuing providing you with world-class service in the very near future. Remain strong and continue to show the world the power of Cayman unity. Kingsport Center, your one-stop shop for fitness, recreation, and relaxation.
Hey, what's up?
I'm good, just been hanging out with some friends.
Oh, for real? Word is that you've been partying and drinking.
I've only been out a few times, and plus, I know how to handle my liquor. And alcohol isn't as harmful as any other drug, so whatever.
Bruh, first of all, your brain is still developing. Plus, too much alcohol can lead to liver damage or alcohol poisoning. Your organs are probably screaming right about now.
So how comes when my friends, my mom and my daughter drink, nothing ever happens to them?
Seriously? 1, you're under 18, which makes it illegal. 2, your brain doesn't stop growing until about age 25, and drinking can affect how it develops. Just because you see someone drinking and they may look fine, their body isn't. Alcohol can cause heart attacks, brain damage, memory loss, cancer, early diabetes, increased blood pressure, depression, alcohol
Wait. Are you serious?
Bro, I'm telling you.
No. I get it. These are some facts I didn't know. I'm glad you shared them. Shatter the myths today. For more information on teens and drinking, visit ndc.ky.
This message is brought to you by the National Drug Council and Radio Cayman.
A public service announcement from Radio Cayman.
You're pressing for everyone to use their good conscience. Don't be selfish in respecting the suggested distance of 6 feet and the washing of hands constantly. Please check on your neighbors and especially our elderly. Also, persons who have chronic lung disease, diabetes, bronchitis, cancer, or asthma. Check on your family members and isolate them soonest as possible. I ask those persons who smoke until it's clear, please do not put anything in your lungs that are not natural. You may well be increasing your risks. This includes vaping. Self-isolation is very important for our country's ability to bounce back quickly to some normalcy. This disease is not prejudice.
It is important, if you come from the UK or the US or indeed anywhere else across Europe or indeed the world these days, to self-isolate. Stay alone for 14 days until you are certain that you do not have the virus and therefore cannot pass it on.
For the latest updates and information, please visit hsa.ky/public-health/coronavirus or gov.ky/coronavirus.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waging to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Good afternoon and welcome back to Talk Today. I'm here with Dr. Mark Lockhart. Just by way of reminder to the listening audience, we're not taking any more calls right now as we may have to go to the press briefing at any time. However, I'd like to hand the mic back to Dr. Lockhart immediately so that he can continue with the information he was providing.
Yeah, so we were just having a talk, Patrick, off the air about, again, things that we can do tangibly to bring a little bit more light into our individual worlds, in a sense. So we were talking about the communication type banks in terms of reaching out to elderly and those that are isolated by using the technology mediums that we have, or even just using the telephone or dropping books off, as you brought up a great idea. Or even, I know that there was a therapist in the community that was actually reading a book or recording it or for an elderly person, or reading over the phone to them for a while. Delivery assistance is going to be very big, not just for supermarkets and other businesses, but even picking up your dry cleaners to drop them off, and just delivery in general, helping around the house. And again, all of this done safely, at a safe distance with the proper protection. But there are a lot of people that don't have the wherewithal or the energy or even the time right now managing kids in the house and working from home to be able to do things outside around the house. And that can open up some opportunities for younger people and others to contribute. It's very important during this period of time to adjust our attention span. Whereas in the past, we could sit down for 2 hours and do something and get absorbed into listening to music or whatever it may be. It's normal to find now that our attention span is less. That even you start watching a movie and an hour and a half into it, you're thinking about something else, or you're checking your phone, or you're looking. So we want to be aware of that and set that expectation.
Right.
So it's better to do many different things for shorter periods of time and then revisit it and understand that that's just part of us dealing, in a sense, with the stress that we're managing. It's important to go back to talking, like what we're doing, just old-fashioned talking.
Yes.
Sitting down as a group, as a family, or with friends, and just conversing and discussing things and pondering things. And that can help to reduce and relieve a certain amount of anxiety. And that we can still exercise, and exercise is extremely important. It actually burns up a stress hormone called cortisol that we all produce when we're just thinking about things and pondering things and being concerned. Our body produces this hormone that then perpetuates that feeling. One of the best ways of burning cortisol is through exercise. I know that gyms and other things may be closed, but you don't need a full gymnasium to work out. You can find ways around the house. You can do calisthenics. You can use a jump rope. You can just walk around your block. Going for a walk is still safe. Again, you keep your distance, but walking up and down your street or doing a few laps around, those things can be very helpful. It can help you to rest better. It can lower anxiety. It gives you a purposeful activity to do. And again, it occupies time and helps us, again, to manage stress overall.
You might even be able to decrease your supermarket bill by growing your own things.
Well, and that's true. That's all of those things. And this is another lesson that I think we're going to take out of this. And I've heard, I think it was one of your shows last week where somebody was calling you about agriculture.
Yes. That's right.
And I think all of these things are writing on the wall, in a sense, worldwide, to point to each and all of us, every country, focusing again on agriculture and realizing that, I remember, I think you had said that we only have like 4% of our land is arable or so on.
Yes, sir.
But hydroponic type gardening and other types of things, we're in a modern world right now. And these are things that I would like us, once this is over and the boom does come back and we start back out to work and moving forward, I think we have lots of lessons that we're going to take from this.
Yes. Necessity is the mother of invention, isn't it?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yes. And obviously we can learn a lot by virtue of these pressures that we've been put under right now, as you mentioned. It may well, and as others have alluded to, it may well actually increase the impetus to ensure that not only are the protocols in place for this particular event, but indeed that these are carried through protocols, as I'm sure that the professionals are cognizant of as well.
Exactly. One other thing is that with all the fear and the anxiety that we talk about and the worry about things, it's very important to also, again, highlight, based again on fact, on history, that we are resilient as human beings in general.
Yes.
And that's what has led to our survival for several thousand years. That's, we are resilient. And even more so, those of us here in the Cayman Islands that have had to build a tiny little place that was very difficult. Many of our forefathers had to go to sea for many years and so on. We're a resilient people. And in all of what we're going through, there are also many stories and will be many stories of resiliency, of overcoming, of fighting forward.
We're going now to the press briefing, pardon me. Thank you, Dr. Lockhart. Sorry, that was a very
Live from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
The 23rd of March.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to welcome you, the viewing public, and of course the listening public and
so,
the media, to our
forward,
discussion here today with our esteemed panelists of government leaders, beginning with His Excellency Governor Martin Roper,
or is it really hard to say right
Premier
now?
the Honourable Alden McLaughlin,
Whether
Dr. John Lee, Chief Medical Officer, the Honourable Dwayne Seymour, Minister of Health, and Police Commissioner Mr. Derek Byrne. Thank you to all of you for being here with us. Lots of questions. The weekend is now over. Dr. Lee, can we start with you?
Thank you. Good afternoon. I need to announce today that there are 2 further positive cases from Health City Cayman Islands. In addition, we have some other results which are imminently going to be shared but are not yet available for sharing. I'd also like to mention there's about a case of a gentleman who was resident in the Cayman Islands who's now died in Honduras. We were made of this, at the moment that Public Health was made aware of this case, we began contact tracing his close contacts in Cayman. We've yet to receive any official confirmation that his death was related to COVID-19.
Okay. Your Excellency?
Okay, thank you very much, Donna. Good afternoon, everybody. In the last few days, we have welcomed home Caymanians and Cayman residents from countries overseas that have recorded significant numbers of COVID-19 cases. As a result, strict measures have already been introduced to keep the public safe and help to prevent a rapid spread of COVID-19. And as I've said repeatedly, I fully support the robust and timely action taken by government. And let me also just underline the Chief Medical Officer's requirement, mandated by law, for returning travellers who arrived in Cayman after the 16th of March 2020 to isolate for 14 days. And travellers who arrived before this date should also self-isolate for a similar period to help reduce risks to the public. In order to help enforce these measures, I am today announcing the imposition of a curfew throughout all 3 islands. The curfew will begin tomorrow, 24 March 2020, and will be in force from 9 p.m. in the evening until 5 a.m. in the morning. Persons are required to remain in their homes and premises during these hours unless the Police Commissioner has exempted them from doing so in writing, and the Commissioner will be issuing a list of exempted persons shortly. The curfew is being imposed under Section 49 of the Police Law 2017 revision and has been authorised after consultation with the National Hazard Management Executive, which includes the Premier and the Leader of the Opposition, and Cabinet has also just given its agreement to this. The curfew will initially be in force for 10 days and will be reassessed by the Police Commissioner every 48 hours. The Commissioner will also provide further guidance as necessary. Anyone who fails to comply with the curfew will be subject to arrest by the police without a warrant, and on summary conviction will be liable to a fine of $3,000 or to imprisonment for 1 year or to both. Now, at this time, there is no need for a state of emergency to be declared, but this will be kept under review in close consultation with the Premier and the Cabinet. It is right that the elected government, which has an extensive degree of domestic autonomy, leads our response, fully supported by the UK through me as Governor. And I believe our Premier is doing an excellent job in highly challenging circumstances. Indeed, my relationship with the Premier, Ministers and opposition leaders is built on a solid foundation of trust and partnership, and that is exactly what is needed at this difficult time. We are living in extraordinary times, and the global situation remains serious and dynamic. The government and I are determined to do all we can to ensure that Cayman takes early and decisive action to help minimise the risks to everyone, and in particular our elderly and vulnerable people. and it is vital that everyone plays their part. Every action by each one of us could directly affect the life and health of someone in our community. All of us have a responsibility to act in a way that will help prevent the spread of the virus. So again, please do follow advice on hygiene measures, social distancing, and even outside curfew hours, please avoid unnecessary contact with others. Stay at home as much as possible, and if you see people acting irresponsibly, please notify the police. I'm also aware of difficulties likely to be faced by many people due to the closure of the airport and the suspension of flights. This measure was fully necessary, but we will be seeking to keep emergency connections open, and we are looking with British Airways at the possibility of maintaining an air bridge to the UK and the overseas territories. Any flights that are arranged will be exceptional and will only allow outbound passengers. I'm therefore pleased to announce that we are establishing an emergency travel helpline which will enable us to give advice and assistance where possible to those who have an urgent and compassionate need to travel whilst this situation continues. The emergency travel helpline will operate from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday. And I should stress again that this is only for emergencies, so please only contact the helpline if your issue is compassionate in nature. We will try to help, but travel options across the region are very limited, and we may not be able to assist everyone. The helpline is due to open tomorrow morning, and the telephone number will be advertised on social media pages and government websites, Premier's social media pages, and all Cayman Islands government websites as well. Finally, I would like to thank everyone who is working tirelessly to keep us safe and minimise disruption to these islands during this very difficult period. We will come through this, and I will not waver in my commitment to support government in taking any further measures needed to save lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Premier McLaughlin.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I believe everyone in the world that has access to any kind of media is following what's transpiring across the world with respect to the continued spread of COVID-19 and the consequences of that. There are now more than 332,000 cases. We're approaching 14,000 deaths. In the United States alone, we're at about 32,000 cases. This is, without question, the gravest health situation that the world has faced in at least 100 years. Here, as the governor has just announced, we are doing everything we can to suppress the transmission of COVID-19 through the broader community. The curfew measures which the governor just announced are aimed precisely at that. We are doing everything we can to get as many people off the road, to distance people from one another in an effort to slow the transmission of the disease through the community. In addition to the curfew measures, I am today announcing that Cabinet has decided, along with the National Hazard Management Executive, has decided to reduce the number of persons who are able to congregate from 50 to 10. This obviously, and for clarity, because we get so many questions, does not apply to the workplace. We are not yet at the stage where we are shutting down Cayman completely. And we fully understand that for workplaces, many workplaces to operate, they will need to have more than 10 people at work. But we are encouraging all businesses to send home or let stay at home all but absolutely essential personnel. And for businesses who do continue to operate, and we're not asking you, we are insisting that you put in place measures to ensure adequate social distancing, which we believe should be 6 feet at a minimum. You need to put in place provisions within your workplace that do not allow employees to come within 6 feet of each other. The previous regulations that we put in place exempted supermarkets and pharmacies from this restriction. This continues to pose serious issues for us. For all of the good measures and good work that's going on to protect Cayman could be completely undermined if people are crushed together in the supermarkets or in the pharmacies. We have also had issues raised about the Home Depots where significant numbers of people have collected together. So the new regulations, which will come into force tomorrow, will require all supermarkets and pharmacies and the named stores, which are the big stores, the really big stores, to have in place provisions which keep staff and customers a minimum of 6 feet apart. For the abundance of clarity, mini-marts, gas stations, convenience stores, and the likes are not supermarkets and are subject to the 10-person maximum customers within the given space. But they are also subject to the 6-foot distancing requirement. So if your convenience store or gas station or mini-mart is too small to accommodate 10 customers keeping the 6-foot distance, then you need to reduce that number to ensure that you comply with the distancing requirement. Further, effective tomorrow, at the time that the curfew comes into effect, all public transport will be suspended for 2 weeks, and the bus depot next to the Georgetown Library closed. We are still working on measures to allow the safe movement of people who absolutely have to go to work to be able to do so. Public transport for this purpose does not include taxi operators. Taxi operators may continue to operate, but limiting passengers to 2, and with every effort being made to create as much space between them as possible. So last night we closed. No, I have one more issue before I go on to the broader discussion. Public beaches. In this time of quarantine and self-isolation, we know, and all of the advice, medical advice and guidance tells us people need to have access to fresh air, opportunities to exercise, and so forth. The public beaches provide a wonderful opportunity, something that many places in the world just don't have, where people can get out and get some fresh air, some exercise, have a swim without congregating in great numbers. But over the course of this past weekend, there has been incredibly irresponsible behavior by many people, not just along 7 Mile Beach, but also up at Rum Point. People treating this as though this is some sort of spring break. Adult people, people that otherwise you would regard as incredibly responsible. This is the last warning. We are putting in place regulations which restrict the numbers of people who can congregate in any public place to 10. That applies to beaches as well. The police will arrest people who are breaking the law. But I go further. If we have more instances of this, we will be forced to shut down the public beaches. That would be a terrible consequence in terms of the options that remain available for people to live life with some reasonable sense of normalcy. But it is something we will be forced to do if the public continues to flout this provision and to ignore the grave consequences of too many people congregating together in these times. So let me just finish with some observations. This is all incredibly stressful for everyone. Many people are panicking. Many people are having mental health issues because of the stress. These provisions that we are have announced today increase the restrictions that are already on normal life. Believe you me, we understand that very well. Not only are some of them inconvenient, many of them are having and will continuing to have serious economic impact on people's lives. The government is considering all of those things and working madly behind the scenes, coming up with measures to make life as normal as we possibly can for everyone. But I need everyone to believe that this is a massive national effort to save our own lives and those of the people that we love most. It needs everybody, I mean everybody, to believe in this in the way you believe that Christ died for sinners. I am serious. Unless it becomes that kind of a mindset for this nation, we are going to face the consequences that we see every day on the television. We are not exempt from this virus. I want everybody to just consider this. Watch the television if you never do. Just go to BBC, go to Al Jazeera, go NBC, CNB, go anywhere. You can't watch it for 2 minutes that this is not the issue. We have put in place some measures earlier than most countries in the world did, which, pray God, they work. We appear to be ahead of the curve with respect to the virus. Many countries, and Italy is probably the best or worst example, depending on how you view it, of that, where the virus got way ahead of government's actions and the country's ability, particularly its health services ability, to deal with the consequences. Hopefully we are still ahead of the curve. We have now shut down the borders of this country. Who's here is here. What's here is here. If our measures succeed, we will go through 2 weeks of great inconvenience and stress. But if our measures succeed, we will have prevented community spread. And then we can look at how we can relax some of these strictures and let people live a more normal life. But if we fail, it is not going to be 2 weeks of semi-lockdown. It is going to be a minimum of 12 weeks of absolute lockdown. Hundreds of deaths, many funerals that we are not going to be able to attend because of the restrictions on numbers. That is what we all need to appreciate. That is why we cannot behave flippantly about this matter. It needs every single soul who is here to believe that this is the right thing and that we absolutely must do it. I thank all the many people who are working so hard to make this happen, to keep us from keep disaster from attending us. They have many more days and weeks ahead. And I want everyone to believe and to support all of the emergency personnel, the doctors, the nurses, all the healthcare staff, all of the people who are working to keep this country safe. They need your thoughts, your prayers, and your reasonableness in expectations. Everybody is working super hard. Everybody is doing the best. The police, in particular, are going to be under great stress in the next couple of weeks 10 days, as they seek to enforce this curfew. Please give them your cooperation and your support. I am sorry to be so morbid, so appear so worried about this, but folk, this is the harsh reality this country faces. We are in a much better place than anywhere else I know around when it comes to these things. Let's do this. Let's set an example for the world about how you manage an epidemic like this. But we need each and every one of you. I appeal to you as your premier, each and every one of you. Let's view this with the seriousness which it deserves, which it warrants, and let's save Cayman and each other together.
Thank you, Premier McLaughlin. Minister for Health, the Honourable Dwayne Seymour.
Thank you, Donna. Good evening, everyone, including Cayman Brac and Little Cayman. I want to say a big thank you to everyone who has been following the restrictive but very important measures put in place. We know it is not easy to immediately prohibit yourselves to habits never practiced before, but prevention is better than cure. The government aims to reduce the possible spread so we don't overburden the resources that are in demand worldwide and causing shortages. We are in this together, even whilst we are making these difficult decisions. Let it be clear, or let me explain. Viruses are tiny organisms that live inside hosts like you. When you have a viral infection like influenza or novel coronavirus, it means that the virus is living inside you, inside your body. Every time we have a new case, it means COVID-19 has spread from one person to another. Like any living organism, viruses multiply and spread to make sure they'll survive. So it spreads from person to person through droplets that an infected person sneezes or coughs out. These droplets can enter your body through the mucous membrane, the wet parts of your face, eye, nose, mouth, which provides a direct pathway to your throat and lungs. The good news is that it can't get in other parts of your body like your skin or your hair. Please don't flirt with this disease as it remains quite deceitful in an asymptomatic manner. Please take tissue or wipes with you whilst opening doors or use other methods. Please use a pen or other items to press keypads or whilst putting in PIN codes at banks. Washing your hand and keeping them clean and out of your face is some of the best ways to prevent this disease. We can't reiterate enough. Please don't display any prejudices against persons displaying COVID-19 symptoms. Please be reasonable and just keep your distance of 6 feet or 2 meters. I want to say how proud we are of all of the students and residents who isolated themselves so unselfishly. Your decision was so remarkable. Kudos to you. We encourage you to stay active, to keep your mental and physical state well. The success to saving the lives of our people depends on you, the whole of the community. We need you to do your part in safeguarding you, your life, your family, and your neighbor. Take all precautions, especially if you're at risk. We can stay ahead of this disease by saving more lives than we lose. I ask you at this time to be very frugal. This may last a while. Conserve and all. Don't spend it. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you, Minister for Health. Police Commissioner, do you have a few words you'd like to say before we...
Thank you, Donna.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think you've all heard the graphic detail from His Excellency, the Governor and the Premier about the heightened threat and risk level that exists in Cayman Islands as we sit here today, particularly with the return of high numbers over the past weekend. Dr. Lee and the Minister have been speaking to us since the start of this pandemic around the medical emergency or public health emergency that exists in the Cayman Islands, and it is a really, really challenging period. I would now like to just make reference to Section 49 of the Police Law 2017 revision. And it says, where it appears to the Commissioner that having regard to an immediate threat to any of the islands of a tropical hurricane or other serious hazard, and I do consider this pandemic to be a serious hazard, the effect on any of the islands or any tropical storm, hurricane or other serious hazard, that there are reasonable grounds to believe that in the interest of public safety or public order it is necessary so to do, the Commissioner may, with the written permission of the Governor, and the Governor has consulted with the National Hazard Management Executive and the Cabinet, impose a curfew throughout the islands. Excuse me. So I have consulted with His Excellency the Governor of the Cayman Islands, and I anticipate that I will receive written permission later this evening to impose a curfew throughout the Cayman Islands between the hours of 9 p.m. and 5 a.m. nightly, commencing tomorrow evening, Tuesday the 24th of March 2020, and continuing for a period of 10 nights, concluding at 5 a.m. on Friday morning, the 3rd of April 2020, as it stands. This order is made as it appears to me that having regard to the immediate threat of a serious hazard across the Cayman Islands associated with the COVID-19 pandemic, that there are reasonable grounds to believe that in the interest of public safety, it is necessary to do so.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'd just like to say to the public that if you have a question that is not answered here today, for whatever reason it can't be, that you can go online to gov.ky starting tomorrow morning and click on the FAQ section where your questions will be placed and answered for you. Also, if you're a civil servant and you have a question that is related to HR matters, we're asking that you email hrconnect@gov.ky with any of those questions for civil servants specifically. Now we're going to move on to the question and answer section. Do you have a question, Reshma?
Yes, thank you, Donna. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, Governor Reshma Raghunath came on Compass. Can you explain to us why the decision was taken to implement a curfew and why these specific hours? What has changed to bring about this decision?
I think the Premier set it out very well in terms of why this next sort of 10-day, 2-week period is absolutely crucial for us. We've got ourselves into a good position, but with so many people coming back from areas where there were many cases of COVID-19, we just want to do absolutely everything possible to mitigate that risk. And a curfew will further reduce the numbers of people out and about. So it is a sensible precautionary measure. And as the Premier said, we'll have to see where we are in 10 days. And there will be a possibility, if we don't get island-wide spread of COVID-19, that we can look at possibly lifting those restrictions. But this is really the crucial period, this next 10 days for everybody on these islands. It really matters, as the Premier said, and we're trying to do everything we can to get ourselves in the best position without completely, at this stage, closing down the island. So it's a sensible measure, and I think it's what we need. Because we're not having a curfew. We're not closing the islands down. We're not locked. So there is still business going on during the day. But by having a curfew at nighttime hours, we are reducing the possibility that people will want to go to each other's houses in large groups after 9 o'clock. That would be one possibility which we want to avoid. But this is simply a sensible measure to avoid people congregating in large groups and really make sure we can prevent that.
If I might add, thank you, Governor, for explaining that. So we looked at trying to keep some of the essential businesses and services that are available, to keep them going at least for the next little while. So we've got to give people a chance to get to work, to be able to go into the supermarket or the pharmacy and get what they need and get home. The supermarkets, all the stores will close at 8 so that people have an hour to get home. So that's the thinking behind that. And obviously, locking it down at 9 o'clock, we're trying to discourage as far as possible people moving about and interacting, going over to the friend's place and hanging out or partying or whatever the case may be. You need 9 o'clock, unless you are an essential worker who has an identification and you are on that list that the commissioner will issue shortly, you're supposed to be in your house. We had a lot of students return. I am very proud of the 137 of them who have volunteered to go into isolation in the properties provided so kindly by the private sector, the hotels, and being monitored by government. But I want to appeal to many other students and young people in particular. Please don't see this as an opportunity for a party. It is human nature, and young people more so than older people, to want to get together and socialize and have a drink. That's fine. But do it in your own home with your own family.
Just continuing on that, Donna, if you don't mind. Commissioner, can you provide us with, say, how are you going to manage this in terms of resources, and also any assurances that you can give to the public that there won't be any incidents of excessive force as you try to enforce this curfew?
So I think the first assurance I should give is that there will certainly be no use of excessive force as we seek to go about imposing the curfew. And I think, as the Governor had quite rightly said, and the Premier, we seek the full cooperation and assistance of the community, and I don't think we'll get anything less. The curfew is a necessary requirement at this time because of the situation we're in, which has already been explained. Normal policing will continue, and additional resources will be employed throughout the islands to enforce the curfew. And the Governor has set out in detail the offences that are committed and the fines that can be imposed for persons who decide to contravene the order. And I expect that they will be few and far between. We are looking for full cooperation and a partnership. There's too much at stake, and it's for the good of the island that it's being done, for good of our own communities. So I can assure certainly no excessive force. We'll be looking to have a reasonable and a practical application of the law with common sense and sound judgment. We do understand completely that there are essential services. People must travel to and from work, and we must maintain essential services, and we'll approach it on that basis.
I have a question from CNS is asking, do we have any idea what the population is now with all of the departures over the last week, plus the returning residents, to give public health an idea of the potential numbers they could be dealing with based on the numbers of expected infections and those who will get sick?
I don't have the numbers with me now following the weekend, but I think as of Friday, there were some almost 6,000 visitors who had left. The number of persons on permits, I don't know. But we will endeavor to get that number and let you know. But if you wanted me to, let me not do that.
Okay, hopefully
I'm
that.
not get quoted. I'm not going to do it.
Also, another question. This one might be for His Excellency. One person says that they understand there's been a hunger strike at Northwood Prison since last week after 3 detainees or inmates were brought in. And they have some concerns because apparently one of the persons was having a really bad cough. Can you explain if that is so? And if so, what's happening?
That isn't the case as far as I am aware. I mean, clearly, as everywhere in the world, there will be concerns around COVID-19 by prisoners and staff. And I've been working closely with the prison director and the ministry and looking at what measures can be put in place to help address those concerns. So a lot of work is being done behind the scenes, and just to say that we are very much aware that this is a major concern.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Kevin Morales, Cayman Compass. Mr. Roper, just a few minutes ago, you had said that you stopped short of declaring, I guess, a national emergency. Can you tell me what would it take for Cayman to get to that point, and what does that mean at that point?
Well, a state of emergency can be imposed, and I work on the concept of partnership and trust. So this will be a decision that I would take if I was advised by the Premier that this was something that was needed in the islands. But I think we're a long way from that point, and as I said, it's right that the elected government leads this response. But if we were to get a serious breakdown of law and order, maybe we needed assistance from the UK. Those are the sorts of situations when a state of emergency might be needed to pass regulations more quickly to face whatever situation we were facing. But we are a long way from that at the moment.
All right, thank you. Dr. Lee, you had talked about imminent results that we would talk about later on. Do you mind expanding on that? Is that just further test results that we're waiting on, or?
We have some results. We just simply haven't had the time to look through them in detail, Kevin. I know you might think, well, why not? Well, because we received them very, very shortly before the meeting. We need to alert the patients. We need to work. We have to match the lab results with the results from the hospital system to make sure the names are all matched up. And we just simply haven't had the time to sit down to do it.
And the 2 new cases you had mentioned are also Health City staffers. Yes. Also, I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, had been isolated this entire time. Same situation as the other 2 patients?
The 2 cases are from Health City. Again, I have not been able to check of the situation of those 2, but they're from Health City.
Okay, thank you very much. And if I can just get one more in. Mr. McLaughlin, following up on I think Wendy's question. So even if we don't have the population numbers, do we have a rough estimate of how many people left over the weekend, or I guess over the past week?
I would be guessing. The numbers I gave you are the ones that I actually saw those numbers. I would have to try to work out in my head how many went. I have a rough idea, but I really don't want to be quoted when the numbers are available. It'll just be tomorrow and I'll have them for you.
Right. And last one, and this is open to anybody. Every so often we'll receive comments, or you'll see the comments online saying, all of these restrictions, all of these things that are going to hurt the economy and cost Cayman millions and millions of dollars, is it worth it? Especially for, a virus with a relatively low mortality rate. What would you say to people who have that opinion?
Well, statistics. Statistics like that, you got a 1% or 2% mortality rate. That sounds great, except if you're one of those statistics, or your mother, or your father, because I don't know why, but 70% of the people dying are older men. So our objective is to reduce as far as possible the number of people who contract this disease, and therefore the number of people who have the possibility of dying from it. Every life is important. Every life. We're not going on statistics here.
I mean, just if I could just add very briefly, I mean, it is our duty to protect the life of everybody on these islands, and that's absolutely fundamental. I mean, in the UK, over the weekend, it's emerged that some younger people who have no health problems are getting into serious difficulties, and we've had a death of a person in their 30s. So we don't. There's a lot about this virus we do not know, and younger people shouldn't assume that this won't affect them. We don't know that. So I think it's absolutely imperative that we do everything to protect the life of everybody on these islands, and that's what we're committed to doing.
I'd like to say that with all the measures, and I know the measures that we're putting in place affect some worse than others, and but I dare to say that the disruption for safety rather than being behind the 8 ball like Italy or France or Spain, I would rather being ahead of the game with this disruption than where they're at in fear and confusion.
I have a question from the public. This relates to HSA staff, some of whom apparently have been given doctor's orders to stay home, but they're actually being called in to work. I don't know if this is the case, but obviously this person said that they know and they just want to find out why this is happening.
But can you repeat that, please?
There's some HSA staff who have been given doctor's orders to stay home, but they're being called in to work anyway. The person would like to know why that's happening.
We're lucky enough to have Dr. Williams here from the HSA. He may be able to address that
Okay,
point.
if you could give him the mic, please. Thank you. Dr. Williams, if you could stand for us.
Yeah, basically, you said, yes. You said that there are some HSA staff asked. Say the question again.
That have been given doctor's orders to stay home. However, they're still being called in to work.
I don't have the details of any particular case, but if any staff from the HSA or anywhere have had doctors know to stay home, it is very unlikely that they were going to be requested to come back to work, especially from the HSA.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Another question relates to Premier McLaughlin. Does the current measures apply to all non-essential services, including construction sites, non-essential stores?
Would you repeat that again? Sorry, I was a bit distracted.
The current measures that are now in place, does it apply to non-essential services, including stores that are non-essential? I don't know, it could be a boutique or something, and construction sites as well.
Which measures?
No. The curfew, I think they're talking about the curfew.
The gatherings, presumably.
And the gatherings.
Right. The only carve-outs from the 10-person rule are work sites, generally.
Right.
With respect to workers, not visitors to the site.
Okay.
Pharmacies, supermarkets, all of whom are required to observe the new, as a matter of law, now required to, the distancing rule of 6 feet between all customers and staff. And a short list of Home Depots who are going to be specifically named in the regulation. I don't want to run through that list because I'm bound to get it wrong off the top of my head. But everybody else, all of the businesses, all of the people are required to limit public congregations to no more than 10 persons. The curfew, there is going to be a list of agencies and areas, like for instance, sanitation workers, medical personnel, CUC staff, those sorts of people. but they'll be on a list. And each worker is required to have the company ID as well as a letter from the CEO, managing director, manager, whatever, saying this person is required to work outside the hours of inside the hours of the curfew.
Okay.
So that's how we're managing that. So if you're a CUC worker, you have your CUC, and then the managing director gives you a letter saying, I need Donna to work during this period. So that when an officer stops the individual, they say, here you go.
Okay.
We're not going to because that's just too complicated. For NEOC, for instance, to issue IDs for everybody. Use your corporate ID. Yes. Those that don't have corporate IDs, because like myself or the governor or whatever, then NEOC will issue us with one.
Okay. Right? Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
I think you also mentioned about boutiques.
Yeah.
I don't think that the Premier was trying to shut down any.
No, we're trying to shut down anybody. Okay. What we're saying is we're appealing at this stage.
Yes, sir.
You know, tomorrow our view, the position might change if we get some really alarming information about community transmission, for instance, and advice from the medical professionals is, listen, we really need to lock Cayman down. The rules will change. I mean, yes. That's how this is operating. But all we're saying now is we're asking businesses slow anyhow. Send home as many people as you can. That still allows you to keep your business working. Hopefully many of them can work from home, but I know a carpenter can't work from home on the construction site. So, I mean, sometimes it's just not possible.
Right. Okay. I have one other question before I go back to the media from the public. What advice would you give to those who have private home pools? And you may have athletes that may want to continue to train in small groups in those home pools. We know strata pools have been
terrible idea
locked off.
And hold that.
The reason that we're asking people not to use strata pools is not for the water itself. It's for everything that's around the strata and for all the pools. That's why we've asked that no pools where lots of different groups will use them are to be used for the time being. If that pool is solely used by that one household and nobody else, there is no problem. But it's only, so that would be a private home pool where only the private household uses it. But we have said no to strata pools and no to public pools.
Okay. Also, outdoor training for athletes who may want to continue training for whatever. Can they train in groups of one or two? Can they outdoor at the Truman Bodden Sports Complex, for instance, rather than in large groups?
Well, the regulations say that no sports groups can meet, so the answer would be no, they cannot. They would have to do it individually.
Thank you.
Seaford Russell Jr. came on campus. Sticking on sports, the International Olympic Committee has refused to postpone or cancel the Olympic Games in Tokyo. Yesterday, we saw that Canada and Australia both pulled from the Olympic Games. To the best of your knowledge, Mr. Premier, where are we in following in those footsteps in terms of the Cayman Islands pulling out from the Olympic Games?
Well, I'm not the sports minister, but I know what her view is. I think we have quietly come to the view quite some time ago that we're not sending anyone anywhere anytime soon.
For you, Mr. Premier, I've been speaking with local farmers recently, and a lot of them are encouraging many residents to get into self-farming and crops and et cetera, et cetera. You, being a farmer yourself, what would be your advice to the public in these uncertain times?
Advice regarding?
Local farming, farming for themselves.
Oh, you mean whether now is the time to start that? I don't know if I would be trying to start anything right now. Logistically, it's just very, very difficult. But, I mean, generally speaking, I certainly encourage, as many people as possibly can to put something in the ground and watch it grow. I mean, that's so special to me. just how it makes me feel, but that's just me. But now is not really the time I would try to encourage anyone to do anything that requires logistically staff, supplies, material, all of those things. Now is the time to hunker down, especially these 2 weeks ahead, and let's see if we can ride through the worst part of the storm. We get to that. If we've managed to contain the virus, we then start taking other decisions so that we can continue to live a decent existence here, while hopefully the virus burns itself out around the world.
Just want to add to that today's Compass has the Minister of Sports view on sending athletes to the Olympics. And also, I know that her view is also grow what you eat.
Eat what you grow.
I have a question as it relates to public transport. Premier McLaughlin, I know that you mentioned that, that you may have mentioned that there may be some ways to work around that, but as you can appreciate, a lot of people depend on public transport. So there are people are asking, what are they supposed to do at this point? What do they do?
Yeah, well, stay home as much as you can, it is my view. And employers who absolutely regard the employee as critical to the business, hopefully they will help to work out some arrangements in that regard. We are still thinking this through, but we believe, particularly, I'll tell you my view, which I came to yesterday, or was it Saturday night? I don't remember. The days just meld one into another now. Is what's happening in the UK, and how the strong messaging that they are now delivering against public transportation, because people are up against each other all the time. This issue was raised in some of the press briefings earlier, and we talked about possibility of, and we were working on regulations to limit the number of people that could be on one of these buses at any given time, and one person to seat, and all sorts of things we were working on. But when you see the pace at which this thing is progressing in the UK, it makes you think again, and it certainly made me think again. And I said, and the reason we didn't want to do it is, as I identified in previous press briefings, we know it is hugely disruptive and inconvenient to people who need to get about. But we believe at this stage that the health risks outweigh the inconvenience.
Okay. Premier McLaughlin, one more question before we move back to the members of the press. Someone is asking why it appears to be that we're doing this in a phase-by-phase stage, as opposed to just locking down for the 14 days and then starting back life again with some normalcy.
Well, we couldn't really do this effectively before today. We needed to get as many people out of the country as we possibly can. We needed to secure the borders so that we know what we're dealing with here. And that's why we're going about it in this methodical manner, as well as I've said many times, trying to make sure that our response is proportionate and rational and proportionate to what we perceive the risks to be at any given time. We still, at least as I'm sitting here, have no evidence of community transmission, although I think all of us believe that it must be happening. So I may come back here tomorrow and tell you we're going to shut the whole country down right now because of what we know. It's constantly evolving, and we're constantly trying to stay ahead of what we believe that the perceived risk is. It is very, very difficult to lock down an entire country, especially a little place like Cayman, for extended periods of time. People have to live. We import just about everything that we have. So we're weighing all of these considerations constantly and trying our collective best to make the best decisions.
Okay, thank you. Reshma? Felicia
Rankin-Solins, Radio Cayman. So with the curfew coming into effect soon, what do people do in certain emergency situations, like if a parent has a very sick child, but it's already past 9 p.m. and they don't necessarily want to call the ambulance, they feel like they could take them themselves? What are they meant to do?
I think probably let the police commissioner handle that one.
Thank you for your question. I think it's a practical application of the curfew and of the law itself. That's an emergency, and we'll deal with it as a medical emergency.
So a parent wouldn't have to be frightened that they'd be seen on the road at night.
I don't think anyone needs to be frightened at all. You need to stay indoors, as has been discussed here at the conference, and for the right reasons. And we're hoping that people will assist us and work with us fully.
Ralph Lewis, Caymanian Times. I have 3 brief questions. First one is for the Premier. Is it the first time that the Cayman Islands has seen a curfew?
No, sir, not at all. You don't remember Hurricane Ivan? 8 weeks of it?
Yeah.
Oh, just to remind some of us. Okay. And have the NAU department seen a huge increase in assistance, in requests for assistance from local community members?
Not huge, not yet. But you're talking about NAU? Did you say NAU?
NAU, yes.
Or you say any unit?
No, NAU.
NAU. No, not yet.
Financial assistance.
Not yet, but it will come. I mean, without question, it will come.
Okay. And has the staff been ramped up to deal with the processing and of these requests?
We're still working on making sure that is right. I need to get a briefing after this. There was a meeting on Friday evening between my chief officer, my councillor, and other staff, talking about the logistics of how we do this to respond to this issue. So, yeah, a lot of work is going on in the background.
Okay. And my final question is for the minister. Are there plans to test the elected officials and the governor?
I wish we did so a long time ago. But, the right answer is that, as Dr. Lee's been saying for some time now, if you're not showing certain symptoms, as if you call the hotline, they'd give you advice as to what to do next. If you're not showing any symptoms, I think it would be very selfish of us to take up those mostly needed tests. It is a limited amount of test kits that we have, and we have to ensure that the people that need them more urgent gets the opportunity to be tested. I don't know if Dr. Lee wants to add to that.
That's correct.
Reshma?
Okay, thank you. Dr. Lee, this is for you. Just to go back to the 2 cases and to build on what you said about the Honduras patient who would have passed away. In terms of the 2 patients, are there any further steps that you're taking in relation to their contact or their interactions with the community? And similarly with this Honduras patient that would have passed away, should members of the community who know him or may have interacted with him reach out to the HSA, or what sort of guidelines can you provide for them in relation to these 2 incidents?
First, before Dr. Lee answers, let us establish that the person that we're talking about was a resident in Cayman and was married to a Caymanian and probably been living here for many years. So it's not just a Honduran national.
Thank you.
So firstly, about Health City, clearly they're in a different and unique position. So Public Health England came and advised of what we should do, and we've followed their advice, and Health City continues to apply that advice to the care of the staff and the patients. I didn't say whether it was a staff or a patient because I don't know the details as yet. I think you mentioned the word patients, but I don't know the details, Reshma. And they continue to do so now, to follow the Public Health England advice. As far as any contact of somebody who we have concerns about, Public Health will contact trace and do the necessary for each case, and that has been done in this instance, yes.
Okay, just to correct, I didn't mean that they were patients. I meant in reference as COVID-19 patients.
But I think just to say about that, for Health City, I know that many of the people, well, some of the people that have been positive had very mild symptoms, so they didn't actually become patients.
Okay. Over the weekend, we heard about, and it was reported to us from GIS, that a student who is in isolation was taken to hospital for assessment without, breaking any rules of personal information. Can you provide us with an update on what's happening with that student?
No. For all the reasons you said about the privacy for any individual, this person's already under a lot of scrutiny. I don't have anything further to add in this matter.
Okay, fair enough. Returning to the reagents, you talked about it on Friday that we were expecting some. Can you give us an update on how many have arrived? Have they arrived?
I mean, reagents continue to be in short supply, and that's an issue which we are doing our best to address. Just for your interest, Public Health England have engaged with something called Crown Agencies, which is the major procurer on behalf of the United Kingdom government. They've been trying all over the world to try and source some of the things they've been wanting to get, and they're finding incredible difficulties in doing so, and have got very limited supply. So it's something that is an international issue. The reagents I referred to last week have arrived. They've given us a capacity of about an extra 100 tests. So we have in round figures about 200 tests that are still available. But it is round figures because sometimes we have to run tests twice for laboratory scientific reasons. We have a number of orders that are out, and we have confirmation that some of them should be coming, but it is always the issue of when they do actually arrive.
I know you said that we had sent some tests back to. We haven't. I have to ask.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm as desperate to know about them as you are. It sounds like they got, from what I understand, they got to Trinidad on Friday, but the courier doesn't deliver on the weekend, and so CARF were trying to get them out of the courier on the weekend, but they failed to do so. So I have not had any news today, but I'm hoping that they've now hit the right destination.
Okay. If I may continue, please. Just building on what Mr. Lewis talked about, Premier and NAU. Over the weekend, the ministry issued a statement adding that they're exploring assisting expatriate workers, foreign workers, as this situation progresses. There have been some who have been critical within the community of extending this facility to foreign workers. How would you address this, or can you address this and respond to these criticisms of government extending this assistance outside of Caymanians only?
Well, let me say this. I believe whether you're Caymanian or not, you need to have a roof over your head, and you need to have some food to eat. This is a humanitarian issue. We are not opening the doors of NAU, the coffers of the government, to persons who are here temporarily and not Caymanian, and saying, here, come and take what you want. NAU will assess each situation and determine whether or not it is necessary for government to ensure that the basic human needs are met during this time of crisis, when the country borders are locked down and people, even if they wish to leave, cannot leave. That's all I was trying to say. I'll give you some real life examples. This morning, as soon as I came in, my PA said to me, there were 2 Cuban refugees who are here lawfully, who were working at a particular establishment. They laid them off on the weekend, gave them 1 day's pay. They are desperate. What should we do about that? Tell them, go fish? We have to ensure that anyone who is living here has the basics to provide for a decent existence while they're here. These are circumstances that in the last 100 years, the world has not faced. And Cayman we pride ourselves as a Christian country, living by Christian principles. I don't know who learn certain Bible verses in school, in Sunday school, but I know I did, right? So do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And for as much as you do this to these, the least of my children, you do it also unto me. I live by those principles.
Thank you, Premier.
Mr. Premier, just to touch back on the curfew implications that you guys have put out, we know that the grocery stores, supermarkets are generally open until 11 o'clock in the night. With that time now being compressed, are there any plans to have security implemented in the gatherings now with the times being lowered? I would assume that more people will now try to get in before a certain time. Are you guys doing anything to avoid congestion?
Well, we've been talking to the supermarket operators. I personally spoke to one of them over the weekend myself, and they themselves have been working really hard. They understand the risks and the challenges that are created by the sheer number of people who are descending upon the place at the time. Over this weekend, things quieted down significantly. The operator I spoke to, who said he had spoken to the other two supermarkets as well, said that this Saturday was the slowest day that they've had in a long, long time. I think maybe everybody's freezers and cupboards are full, or people are running out of money, or whatever. But I think it slowed down significantly. I think people are getting more used to the idea that this is going to be a marathon and not a sprint, that food and other supplies are going to be generally available, notwithstanding all of the challenges, and I hope are calming down more. But the police have also stepped up their surveillance. I know police were in at least one of the supermarkets over the weekend, and the commissioner's here, he can speak for himself, but I'm sure that more of that will be done, because we are going to get much more serious about this issue now. And I hope people don't believe that they just made these rules and we don't really have to worry about them, because people are going to get arrested if they don't cooperate with what we're trying to do. This is a national health threat. It's not just about some small infraction. If you don't follow the rules relating to social distancing and behaving, you are endangering the entire community.
I have a question from CNS asking about testing again. Are testing rates likely to increase anytime soon as we remain in the dark about potential community infection? And will the criteria be relaxed, given the fact that people who recently left Cayman are testing positive in other jurisdictions, and that no one here needed to have traveled any further than Hogstye Bay before the port was closed to have been exposed? Is this a public health? Are we worrying about this?
The testing guidelines are set out by the World Health Organization. They're not set out by the Public Health Department here, and those are the ones that we are following. They have subtly changed over the weeks, but they are largely the same. Well, they're not. I don't think many people would notice a difference from when they started out, and that is what we're following.
Okay.
If I could preface that, if we had the ability to do much more widespread testing, and that may be coming online. So I'm sure people have read about the kits that are coming, and I've heard rumors that they may be approved in a number of different jurisdictions. So it could have happened while we're talking, I'm not sure. But if we get some that have been approved by a substantial national public health agency, it will probably change the way we manage this situation. But until such time, we are using the current WHO guidelines.
Okay. One other question, Premier McLaughlin, maybe you can take this one. Is there any consideration being given to assist, a lot of kids are home now, a lot of people are working from their homes. Of course, that means increased electricity bills for everybody across the board. Any consideration being given to assisting, I guess, everybody that's doing that, basically, the entire country? Any financial assistance for people who will incur increased electricity bills because of that?
Well, we're doing everything we can, but government's resources are not unlimited. And quite frankly, if we made a concession for every request I've had, I think we'd be broke by the end of next month. We are working as hard as we can to reduce people's obligation to pay now when you're not earning. In many cases. Mm-hmm. So again, today, seen another bank, CIBC, has said they are offering up to 6 months holidays on loan and mortgage payments. I think we're going to see more of that. We've had concessions, similar concessions with respect to the water company, the water authority, CUC. So people's outgoings should significantly reduce. Rubis has reduced the cost of fuel to the retailers by 40 cents a gallon. That's a huge cut. The fuel prices generally have collapsed, some will say, over the world over, and therefore CUC bills are bound to fall significantly because the fuel factor is a direct flow through. So all sorts of measures, and we are exploring as many as we possibly can, are being put in place with the cooperation for which the government and the entire country should be most grateful of the corporate community to help all of us get through these very, very difficult times. And we will continue to explore what we can do. But I can't give an undertaking to pay or make a contribution to everybody's electricity bill. Otherwise, Ms. Donna, you mightn't get paid month after next.
We can't have that happen, can we? Okay, we're going to wrap up here in about 5 minutes. So any final questions?
Thank you, Donna. Just building on what you've said, earlier today, the opposition leader issued a statement, and he has written to you recommending a pension holiday for workers to kind of offset these kinds of situations with high bills and so forth, as well as recommending allowing residents to draw down on their pension, I think $850 a month, to kind of help sustain their living as we continue to deal with the coronavirus crisis. Is this something your government is considering? Are you open to that idea? I know you talked about dealing with pensions before, but can you update us on that?
Well, someone's told me that that the opposition has issued a statement. I've just recently seen a letter on my desk. I'm not sure whether this is the opposition, being willing to sit down with the government and work through these things, which I've talked about, or whether this is not, just political grandstanding at its worst during a major national emergency. If the opposition truly wants to help us, they'll come and sit down around the table as I've proposed and talk about these issues and come up with a collective position rather than sending out some public statement saying this is what the government should be doing. If the leader of the opposition and his team were being really earnest about this, he would have written me. He would have said, "Can I come in and talk to you about these things?" And we'd work together. What we saw was a public statement followed swiftly by a letter to me saying, "This is what I think you should be doing." So I hope we can get past that. Lord knows there's plenty of time for politics, but now is not that time.
I know you had indicated that you intended to meet with the opposition and set up a meeting. Is that still the plan? And has that been arranged?
Well, it is now over to them. I'm going to tell the leader of the opposition, listen, if you really want to dialogue and to talk about these things, as I mentioned on Friday, then let's do that. But if you're going to conduct this matter in a public statement sort of format, that is completely unhelpful to what we're trying to do. We are at the start of a crisis. I hope it doesn't get any worse, but all of my instincts tell me there's going to get a lot harder over the next little while. now is not the time for political grandstanding and public statements about what you would do if you were the premier, because that's essentially what they're saying, and what you would do if you were the government. We need to have honest, earnest dialogue about what's best for Cayman, so that we all come out the other end as intact, as whole as we possibly can, and then you can start the election campaign about who's going to be the next government, who's going to be the next premier. It certainly can't be me.
On a lighter note, over the weekend, we saw a picture from one of the students who were in isolation, Giovanni Ebanks, and his sentence. Alden said so. What message would you have to send to the students who are engaging in isolation practices, and any words of encouragement for them in light of what we saw over the weekend?
Yes, I was delighted to see that, although a little embarrassed, but yes, it's precisely the kind of thing that I think young people need. It encouraged me, let alone them, and it's very hard for anybody to sit in isolation, because isolation means you're alone for 14 days with just a television screen and your phone, and so. We know they're going through a very, very difficult time. We're doing everything, as he said, we possibly can to make it easier. But how you shorten the days, is impossible for us to work out. So I commend them, all of them, for this act on their behalf, on their part, because they have behaved incredibly responsibly, as we would expect of the next generation of leaders of Cayman. They are, as I've said, the cream of Cayman. These are our young people who are away at university, getting ready, preparing themselves to take their place in this community, and it's marvelous to see them acting so responsibly. I am incredibly proud of them.
And with that, we're going to end the press briefing today. Again, if your question hasn't been answered from the public or from the media, you can go online to gov.ky tomorrow morning where those questions, and go in the FAQ section where those questions will be answered for you. Also, if you're a civil servant and you have any questions related to yourself being a civil servant, you can send emails to cighrconnect@gov.ky. And thank you, of course, to our listening and viewing public for joining us here on this press conference today. We'll see you back here again tomorrow.
Imagine if we all practice safe driving.